Chapter 531. After returning to the Mu residence, Mu Tianhe and the others didn't sleep. They had been waiting for Mu Yu. When they saw Mu Yu's figure, they let out a sigh of relief. Mu Yu, you're back. That's great. Little Xian came back after you left. We wanted to inform you, but we were worried that we wouldn't be able to help. So, Mu Rongshuan said nervously. At this moment, Mu Xian was sleeping peacefully in his arms. Not long after Mu Yu left, Mu Xian fell asleep alone at the gate. It was Uncle Mu who heard someone knocking on the door and went out to check. He found her and brought her in. I'm fine. Little Xian should be fine, right? Mu Yu asked. Mu Yu placed his hand on Mu Xian's forehead and used the spirit force in his hand to circulate around Mu Xian's body. When he found that Mu Xian was safe and sound, he reluctantly believed by Yetian's words. She just fell asleep. I've seen her. She should wake up tomorrow morning, Kai Lai said. What the hell is going on? Is it really Shadow Killer Qingming? Mu Tianhe asked anxiously. Everyone looked at Mu Yu. They had more or less heard of how powerful Shadow Killer Qingming was and were very worried that something would happen to Mu Yu. But fortunately, Mu Yu came back safe and sound. Everyone's heart was finally put down. Mu Yu shook his head. It's not Shadow Killer Qingming. It's a young man. Have any of you heard of the Shadowless clan? The appearance of the Shadowless clan at night made Mu Yu very puzzled, especially what Bai Yetian said. There were some powerful forces hidden in the cultivation world, and the 8 gates didn't represent the entire cultivation world. It seemed that Mu Yu's knowledge of the cultivation world was still too little. Mu Tianhe and the others looked at each other. They were the same as Mu Yu. They had never heard of the so-called Shadowless clan. Even Kai Lai didn't know. But on the side, Master Lu suddenly exclaimed softly, Are you talking about the Shadowless clan? Everyone turned to look at Master Lu. Mu Yu nodded. Master Lu, do you know about the Shadowless clan? Lu Xianxue thought for a while and said, The Shadowless clan is a very strange organization. I once heard a member of the Shadowless man mention it when I was helping Shun Xian Hall make a communication array. Master Lu, you really do business with anyone, Mu Yu said helplessly. Not only did Master Lu help the major sects to deal with the matter of arrays, but he also helped the $1 million trading company to make the green jade that could reveal the whereabouts of the supreme immortals. He also helped the evil sects casino to arrange the gambling array. He even helped the Shun Xian Hall, which belonged to the silhouette being, to make a communication array. In Mu Yu's view, these forces were not good birds. A large part of Master Lu's business was helping the tyrant. However, Mu Yu certainly wouldn't blame him, because the Array faction originally relied on this to make money, just like how the silhouette being made money by eliminating disasters for people. Master Lu smiled awkwardly. We don't refuse anyone. We only care about setting up arrays and collecting rewards. We don't care about the privacy of the customers. But then again, I did hear them mention something about the Shadowless clan. The Shadowless clan seems to be the sworn enemy of the silhouette being. They specialize in destroying the business of the silhouette being, especially the business of killing people. Master Lu pondered for a moment and continued. Last time, I heard that a Shadowless killer was killed by the Shadowless clan, and the senior member of the silhouette being was very angry. I'm quite curious. The Shadowless killer has always been very powerful, but he was still killed by someone. It's really amazing. They specialize in destroying the business of killing people. Why? Don't the people of the Shadowless clan like to kill people? Mu Yu felt that it was a little strange. I don't know, but I think this Shadowless clan might be trying to get compensation or something. If the assassination mission fails, they will have to pay double the compensation, right? Master Lu guessed. The silhouette being had always accepted money from people to solve problems. In order to show that they were trustworthy, they set a rule that if the mission was not completed within the specified time, they would pay double the deposit to the customer. Killing people was very risky, and the higher the cultivation of the target, the more expensive it would be, and the higher the deposit would be. If the mission failed, the loss of the Shun Xian Hall would also be huge. The reason why the silhouette being dared to set the compensation rule was that the Shadowless killers they sent were all very confident in their assassination. The most famous Shadowless killers were the 20 Solar Terms killers, but it did not mean that they only had 24 killers. The silhouette being had countless shadowless killers. It was just that the price to hire the 20 solar terms killers was quite expensive. Get compensation? It's quite interesting to make money from this aspect. According to what you said, if the Shadowless clan deliberately sent people to kill people and then found a way to kill a certain Shadowless killer, they could indeed get compensation. But such a mysterious organization wouldn't be so bored as to do such a thing, would they? Muyu couldn't help but laugh. You're right. I remember that the senior leader of the Silhouette being said that the Shadowless clan was a very difficult bone to deal with. I think that if the Silhouette being thought that the Shadowless clan was a difficult bone to deal with, it would be impossible for them to just get compensation, right? The strength of the Shadowless clan is at least not weaker than the Silhouette being, Lu Xianshur continued. But even I have never heard of the Shadowless clan, Kai Lai said with a puzzled look. As an alchemist of the Danding sect, Kai Lai had heard a lot about the cultivation world. He knew a lot about the Silhouette being, but he had never heard of the Shadowless clan, which was very strange. Not only him, but Muyu had also never heard of the mysterious Shadowless clan before. If they were a force that even the Silhouette being was afraid of, why did so few people in the cultivation world know about their existence? Do any of you have information about the Supreme Immortal Leaderboard? Do you know what Bai Yetian's ranking is? Muyu asked again. Bai Yetian was about 20 years old, and his cultivation level was also at the spirit severing stage. So he must be one of the Supreme Immortals on the Supreme Immortal Leaderboard. I have this. This is the Supreme Immortal Leaderboard I bought when I came to Clearwater City a while ago. Kai Lai took out a long and narrow piece of white paper from his heaven and earth sleeve and handed it to Muyu. The information on the paper was extracted from the Supreme Immortal Leaderboard, and it only briefly introduced the ranking and origin of each Supreme Immortal. It was not as detailed as the green jade that Huaibei gave to Muyu, so it was not expensive. It was only about 10 spirit stones per piece, and it was signed with the ranking on May 10th. The ranking changed every day, so each piece of paper was marked with a date for reference, so the accuracy was not very high. Muyu looked at the name of the Supreme Immortal carefully, and he saw that his ranking was still at 80. This was because he had not killed Tian Kaiyu when Kai Lai bought the list. Ling Zheng, who had died a few months ago, was still at 67th place. This was because the Forbidden Art domain had destroyed the Supreme Immortal Leaderboard. This situation was very rare, and the Supreme Immortal Leaderboard could not change it. Then, he saw Bai Yetian's name. Bai Yetian's ranking was 93rd. Strange, Muyu muttered. The 93rd Supreme Immortal was very abnormal. Bai Yetian was at the spirit-severing stage at such a young age, so logically speaking, he should be in the top 60. However, he was only at 93rd place, which was obviously not right. One had to know that even Kai Lai, who was at the 5th firmament of the out-of-body stage, was ranked 84th. Bai Yetian was definitely much higher than Kai Lai, so it was impossible for him to be as low as 93rd place, unless he did it on purpose like Muyu. He even lost to others on purpose to lower his ranking. The introduction of Bai Yetian was only one simple word: itinerant cultivator. How dare he look for trouble with you at 93rd place? I already told you to let me deal with him. Kai Lai rubbed his hands together and said. He is at the spirit-severing stage. It's just that he didn't try to get on the leaderboard, Muyu explained. Kai Lai's hand stopped in midair. Then he pretended that he didn't hear anything and said, Then I'll deal with him later. He didn't do anything to you, right? Mu Tianhe asked with concern. He knew that Muyu was only at the out-of-body stage, so it was still too difficult for him to deal with a spirit-severing stage cultivator. Muyu smiled slightly. His strength had not been fully displayed in front of the people of the Mu family, and the people of the Mu family also didn't know much about Muyu. Don't worry, Grandpa. He didn't do anything to me. Muyu was more curious about this person from the Shadowless clan than Si Kong Chiwen. There are not many people who could defeat the Shadowless clan. That's good. It's already so late. Everyone should go and rest first. We'll talk about it tomorrow. Mu Tianhe looked at the night sky and found that it was already dawn, so he changed his mind and said, let's talk about it in the afternoon. Everyone nodded and went their separate ways. Mu Yu also returned to his room and lay on his bed, but there were still many things in his mind. From the rise of Sikong Chiwen to the huge scale of challenging Tianbu Wait in Clearwater City, the whole thing had become very complicated. First of all, who was behind Sikong Chiwen? If one didn't have any background and dared to openly provoke the heavens, the tallest tree in the forest would be destroyed by the wind. How could Sikong Chiwen not understand this logic? Or was he so arrogant that he thought he could really defeat all the people who came to challenge him? One had to know that Sikong Chiwen was a person who had advanced by leaps and bounds in a short period of time. This kind of person would definitely attract a lot of attention. Everyone wanted to know the secret of his rapid increase in cultivation from him. Did Sikong Chiwen really think he could keep a secret? Since Bai Yetian was from the Shadowless clan, then what he said at night shouldn't be false. Indeed, Shadow Killer Qing Ming didn't come to Clearwater City to kill Sikong Chiwen or Tianbu Wait because of the gambling incident. Instead, he was sent by Stargate to kill Mu Yu. But this was not the point. The point was that Mu Yu found that what Bai Yetian said was right. If Shadow Killer Qing Ming and Bai Yetian used the Mu family as hostages to force Mu Yu to submit, then what would Mu Yu do then? The Mu family didn't leave the compound. With the protection array set up by Mu Yu, they could completely resist outsiders. Even Shadow Killer Qing Ming couldn't sneak in quietly. However, the Mu family couldn't hide here forever. Mu Yu carefully observed the Shadowless token. Things were getting weirder and weirder these days. The sudden appearance of a Shadowless clan made things more and more confusing. Clearwater City was well known in the cultivation world because of the rise of Sikong Chiwen. Sikong Chiwen also set off a storm in the cultivation world because he wanted to challenge Tianbu Wait and the disciple of the true god. It attracted a lot of people to watch the battle between these three genius extreme immortals. Now, Clearwater City was filled with all kinds of self-cultivators. It had become one of the most prosperous cities in the 3 continents. Under this bustling city, there were a few undercurrents surging restlessly, each brewing a conspiracy. Sikong Chiwen, whose cultivation had skyrocketed in a short period of time, seemed to be the key to the whole thing, and Mu Yu became the stumbling block that others wanted to get rid of. Mu Yu checked the Extreme Immortal leaderboard. The top 50 Extreme Immortals and the bottom 50 Extreme Immortals were 2 different concepts. It could be said that it was a watershed. He remembered very clearly that among his fellow disciples, Qing Yan was ranked 50th, Luo Shang was ranked 39th, Xiang Nan was ranked 76th, and Lan Ling was ranked 81st. Now, Qing Yan was ranked 37th, Luo Shang was 36th, Lan Ling was still 81st, and Xiang Nan. Mu Yu suddenly sat up on his bed. Why was Xiang Nan ranked 9th? Chapter 532. Mu Yu was shocked. Mu Yu would not be surprised if Luo Shang or Chang Yan made it to the top 9. Cheng Yan was a very steady person with great talent. However, he had been cultivating in the Moyun mountain range, where the spirit qi was scarce, so his cultivation speed was slower than Luo Shang's. As for Luo Shang, even though Mu Yu did not like his second senior brother, it was an undeniable fact that Luo Shang's talent was not inferior to Mu Yu's. However, the usually honest Xiang Nan was only ranked 76th at the start. Now, he had surpassed his first senior brother and second senior brother, and even made it to the 9th place. The top 9 Extreme Immortals were the leaders of the Yaman War. All humans had to listen to their orders. Every Extreme Immortal's goal was to become one of the top 9 Extreme Immortals. Mu Yu had never expected the well-behaved Xiang Nan to amaze the world with a single brilliant feat and successfully become the 9th Supreme Immortal. What the hell is going on? One had to know that Tian Buling, who was ranked 50th, and Sikong Chiwen, who was ranked 51st, were both at the 6th celestial stage of the spirit severing stage. This meant that the top 50 Extreme Immortals were at least at the spirit severing stage. Mu Yu could accept that both Luo Shang and Cheng Yan were at the spirit severing stage. However, Mu Yu had the impression that the honest Xiang Nan was a lazy person. If he could make it to the 9th place, his strength might not be as simple as being at the spirit severing stage. When the Nine Heavens Demon Sealing Formation was activated, Spirit Lord Tu Yameng in Xiangnan's body was not sealed. Did something happen to Xiangnan? A few thoughts flashed through Mu Yu's mind. The only person who did not succeed in the Nine Heavens Demon Sealing Formation was Xiangnan. Back then, Spirit Lord Tu Yameng had taken the initiative to return control of Xiangnan's body to him. Xie Bulo had wanted to kill Xiangnan, but his master, Feng Haochen, had stopped him. Xie Bulo had also forbidden Xiangnan from leaving the 50-mile garden. If Xiangnan wanted to defeat all the extreme immortals in front of him and enter the 9th place, he would have to leave the 50-mile garden in the south. How did he escape Xie Bulo's surveillance? Eerie Shadow Everlasting was an immortal existence like Jian Ying and Chen Feng. Their cultivations were extremely frightening, and even the 5 spirit lords Yu Meng were extremely wary of him. It was almost impossible for Xiangnan to escape from under Xie Yolao's nose. So what had happened? Could it be that Xiangnan had secretly escaped when Xie Bulo left the 50-mile garden? Is Xiangnan really under Hotu's control? If it weren't for the fact that Mu Yu had a lot of things to do, he would have immediately gone to the 50-mile garden in the south to ask Cheng Yan about the situation. Right now, not only was he being targeted by Ying Sha and Qing Ming, but he was also being targeted by Ren Tian. The safety of the Mu family was not guaranteed, either. He could not leave Clearwater City. Senior Xiangnan, please don't let anything happen to you. Mu Yu had a bad feeling about this. More and more bad things were happening. The only thing that gave Mu Yu hope was that soon, the 9 Shi soul-cleansing flower's death aura would not be able to suppress the vitality of the netherworld grass. When that happened, his master would be able to recover his cultivation and clean up all the mess. Master should be able to think of a way to solve Xiangnan's problem, right? Mu Yu could only try his best to think positively. The sun had risen a long time ago. It was one day closer to the 6th day of the 6th month. After Mu Xian woke up, everyone asked her what happened yesterday. Unfortunately, Mu Xian could not remember anything. She only said that she was looking at clothes in the tailor's shop before falling asleep. Everyone could only let it go. Mu Yu told everyone from the Mu family not to leave the Mu mansion for the next few days. All business outside was temporarily suspended. There were less than 6 days left until the 6th day of the 6th month. Ying Sha and Qing Ming were still hiding in the dark, waiting for an opportunity to strike. Ying Sha and Qing Ming were the gate master of Stargate. Tian Yuan was worried about his son's safety, so he chose to pay a huge price to asking Sha and Qing Ming to kill Mu Yu. Mu Yu was not surprised by Stargate's shameless actions. On one hand, they were helping his son build momentum. On the other hand, they were helping his son get rid of the dissidents. If Tian Yuan had helped Tian Yuan in the dark in the past, then Mu Yu would look down on Tian Yuan. Not only did the 8 Gates team up to help Tian Yuan, but Tian Yuan was also helping him. This so-called battle between 2 immortals disgusted Mu Yu. If Mu Yu wanted to kill Tian Yuan, Ying Sha and Qing Ming would definitely come out to stop him. Since that was the case, Mu Yu planned to get rid of Ying Sha and Qing Ming first. Mu Yu didn't want to sit still and wait for death. He planned to take the initiative to attack. If I can't even defeat Ying Sha and Qing Ming, then it's even more impossible to kill Tian Yuan. Mu Yu said to himself. As for the Shadowless clan, whose goal was to destroy the silhouette being, he didn't trust them, nor did he want to rely on them. Are you really going to do this? That's the famous assassin Ying Sha and Qing Ming. Master Lu was a little worried. Although Mu Yu told him the plan, he was still not at ease. Don't worry. It's not certain who will sweep whose grave on the Qing Ming festival next year. Mu Yu's eyes revealed a rare fierce light. Just follow my plan. Mu Yu was the gate master of Formation Glyph Gate, and he relied on more than just his own cultivation. Okay then. I'll go with Situ Yang Tian. You have to be careful. Master Lu hesitated for a moment, then hurriedly left the Mu mansion. There were only 5 days left before the competition, but Mu Yu had already left the Mu mansion alone during the day, leaving Clearwater City under the watchful eyes of the public. His appearance attracted the attention of many people. After all, whether it was the Sikong family, the Mu mansion, or or the mansion where Tian Yuan lived, it was inevitable that there would be people secretly spying on them. Many people were very interested in the whereabouts of the three genius supreme immortals. Therefore, when Muyu left Clearwater City for less than a quarter of an hour, the news had already spread. Why did the true God's disciple leave Clearwater City at this time? Could it be that he felt that he was no match for Tian Yuan and Sikong Chiwen? So he decided to give up this competition? It shouldn't be that simple. Let's go and see. Many meddlesome self-cultivators secretly followed behind Muyu. However, Muyu's figure had already disappeared into the vast yellow sand after leaving Clearwater City. No one knew where he had gone. The true God's disciple actually ran away? This was everyone's guess. Clearwater City was surrounded by a barren desert, and it was the only oasis in the desert. In the desert, if one did not have a guide or someone who knew the way, it was easy to get lost. Although cultivators could be crippled, even an out-of-body stage cultivator would need 2 days and 2 nights to fly out of this desert. A round trip would take at least 4 days and 4 nights. There were less than 5 days left before the competition. Muyu's disappearance from Clearwater City in the desert was obviously an escape. Isn't he too spineless, running away at this time? In an instant, the Clearwater City cultivators who came to watch the competition discussed among themselves. They felt that Muyu had damaged the dignity of a true god. That might not be the case. He could have just gone to the desert to gain enlightenment. I spent 1,000 spirit stones on him winning. If he ran away at the last minute, wouldn't that mean that my 1,000 spirit stones were wasted? Oh my god. I took a risk and decided to bet on him winning. If I had known, I would have bet on Sikong Chiwen winning. Huh, are you dumbfounded? I spent 10,000 spirit stones on Sikong Chiwen winning in the end. Why do I feel that the odds of winning are higher if you bet on heaven is not waiting? I heard that the 8 gates are on Sikong Chiwen's side. Muyu has potential, but he's not there yet. Anyway, if you want to win money, you can't bet on him. What made everyone feel strange was that after Muyu left Clearwater City, the Mu Mansion was still very quiet. There was no movement, and no Mu family members appeared in front of the cultivators. Many people knew that the Mu Mansion could not be broken into. Therefore, they did not understand what had happened to the Mu family. Could it be that Muyu had just returned to the Mu family and abandoned his family? In a dark corner, a shadow stood quietly. Finally out, the shadow seemed to be talking to itself. Then, it slowly disappeared into the corner. In the desert, the scorching sun roasted the yellow sand, giving off steam as if it wanted to melt the sand. The layers of sand dunes were like waves, rising and falling high. Occasionally, there would be some severely weathered sandstones in the desert. They were weird and rugged, standing upright in the sun. At this moment, Muyu was sitting cross-legged on a towering sandstone. He held his breath and cultivated, absorbing the spirit chi in the desert. Even the spirit chi in the desert was extremely hot. If he could not calm this heat, even if he absorbed it into his body, it would cause anxiety and affect his cultivation. However, the falling dust mantra emphasized one state of mind, so he was able to successfully remove this strand of heat. Muyu was sitting cross-legged on the sandstone with an anti-heat formation. It could isolate the heat outside. At this moment, little Shuai was leisurely lying on the ground, munching on a watermelon. This watermelon was grown by Muyu using his spirit chi. The dragon vine was coiled around Muyu's hand, cultivating along with Muyu's would attribute spirit chi. The dragon vine was now in the out-of-body stage. It had learned a lot about formations from Muyu. It could successfully transform its breath into the dragon vine howling sky sword formation. Its power was not to be underestimated. As for little Shuai, who only knew how to eat all day, no one knew what its cultivation was. In any case, it looked pretty good when it used little Shuai's mysterious lightning fall. It even personally took care of Talisman Grandmasters Jiang Xiandi. The reason Muyu came here alone was to settle things with Shadow Killer Ming Ming. His cultivation might not be as good as Shadow Killer Ming Ming, but in a real fight, Muyu had countless tricks up his sleeve. Since Stargate's Gate Master Tian Yuan had no confidence in his son, Muyu would make his worries come true. Muyu cultivated under the sun for an entire day. No one came to disturb him. Night soon fell. The moon hung in the sky, illuminating the entire desert. During the day, there were still rolling waves of heat, but at night, there was a slight chill. The temperature difference between day and night was quite large. During the day, the temperature was 60 to 70 degrees Celsius, but at night, it was only around 10 degrees. The wind blew the yellow sand into the air, making rustling sounds as it danced in the air. Suddenly, a floating pulsatilla flew over under the night sky. The pulsatilla's clear cry was refreshing in the desert. The pulsatilla's appearance in the desert was very abrupt. It also made the desert look a little strange. Muyu looked up at the pulsatilla soaring under the moonlight and asked calmly, "The pulsatilla is a Taoist bird of immortality. It is said to be a symbol of longevity. Why did it become a symbol of Ming? It's called Return to Heaven." The pulsatilla flew gracefully. Under the moonlight, its shadow constantly shuttled back and forth among the sand dunes. After the shadow shuttled to the sand in front of Muyu, it stopped moving. Then, a human figure slowly emerged from the pulsatilla shadow. "Isn't it about time to return to heaven when your hair turns white?" The human figure slowly said. His entire body was hidden in the shadows. Even the moonlight couldn't clearly reveal his face. It was as if he was a pure shadow, making people feel very uncomfortable. Chapter 533. Muyu slowly stood up. Well said. "I have to kill you in order to give me peace, right?" Muyu slowly stood up. He didn't sense any cultivation fluctuations from Qing Ming's body. It was as if he was just an ordinary shadow with nothing special about him. However, he sensed danger from this inconspicuous shadow. "No." The shadow suddenly opened his eyes. His eyes were filled with killing intent. They were like ice that hadn't melted in 1,000 years. They were emotionless and chilling. Muyu raised his eyebrows. "I'm the one who's going to kill you," Qing Ming said calmly. A monstrous killing intent swept through the yellow sand. It was cold and austere. The sand didn't seem to be floating anymore. The air became heavy, and time seemed to have stopped. In the face of Qing Ming's killing intent, Muyu didn't move. He knew that Qing Ming's ranking on the Supreme Immortal Leaderboard was higher than Tian Buchi. This meant that Qing Ming had the power of a severed soul stage cultivator. Qing Ming wasn't an idiot like Tian Kaiyu. Muyu wouldn't underestimate him. "I thought you really did escape from Clearwater City like they said," Qing Ming said. Muyu looked at him, but didn't reply. Qing Ming continued, "I'm very curious about you. Why is an out-of-body stage cultivator like you so calm in front of me? Are you prepared to celebrate your death anniversary next year? Are all Shadow Slayers chatterboxes?" Muyu asked. Qing Ming let out a strange sound. It sounded like he was laughing, but it was very unpleasant. "I don't usually like to talk nonsense with my targets. However, you're a true God's disciple. That's why I reluctantly said a few words. I heard that a true God disciple is the one who can create miracles. However, this miracle might end tonight," Qing Ming said. A sharp whistling sound came from afar. Under the cover of the night, 2 black chi blades slashed toward Muyu. "You said it too. It's just a maybe." The runes under Muyu's feet flickered, and he disappeared. The sand under his feet had been reduced to dust by the black chi blades. Xiao Shuai was lying on Muyu's shoulder with a piece of watermelon in his hand. "A quarter of an hour. If you can last 15 minutes against me, I'll turn around and leave. I'll consider this business deal a failure." Shadow Slay's clear tone carried a hint of mockery. He did indeed have the right to be arrogant. As an extreme celestial who was ranked 43 on the extreme celestial rankings, his cultivation was rather terrifying, and he had taken the lives of countless people. No matter how formidable the disciple of a god might be, he was still only at the leaving aperture realm. There was no way he would be able to do anything to Zhang Xian. A quarter of an hour? Muyu's eyes reflected black and white light under the cold moonlight. "The people I want to kill have never lasted more than 15 minutes in my hands." Qing Ming was still a shadow, but his hand was already raised. A streak of black spiritual power shot up into the sky and hit the pulsatilla that was soaring in the air. Then the pulsatilla suddenly turned black, and it split into two into four. In the blink of an eye, 16 pulsatilla appeared under the moonlight. At this moment, the 16 pulsatilla Wang had once again revealed 16 shadows under the moonlight. The pulsatilla Wang began to dance around Mu Yu, and the shadows on the ground also intertwined around Mu Yu from time to time. One of the pulsatilla's shadows rapidly attacked Mu Yu. When Mu Yu saw that ordinary shadow, a strong sense of danger surged in his heart. He had already leaped into the air. At the same time, a human figure emerged from the shadow that was approaching him. It was Shadow's Lei Qingming. The sharp black light in Qingming's hand flashed as he attacked Mu Yu. Almost in the blink of an eye, Mu Yu's figure disappeared and dodged Qingming's killing blow. Shadow's Lei Qingming relied on shadows to kill people. He could freely switch his figure among the 16 pulsatilla shadows. Once Mu Yu was approached by the 16 pulsatilla shadows, he would be greeted by Shadow's Lei Qingming's fatal attack. The 16 pulsatilla's speed was quite fast. Even among the spirit-severing stage self-cultivators, there might not be anyone faster than them. They flew quickly in the sky, and their shadows under the moonlight were also very fast, rushing towards Mu Yu. However, Mu Yu's speed was not slow either. His Big Dipper constellation formation flashed from time to time, making these shadows completely unable to get close to him. The terrifying killing intent pervaded the surroundings, sweeping through every shadow. Every shadow in the desert was exuding a cold and austere chill. Mu Yu understood that just by relying on the speed of his cultivation base, he would not be able to avoid the pursuit of these 16 pulsatilla shadows. Fortunately, he had a very powerful Big Dipper constellation formation technique, so avoiding these 16 pulsatilla shadows was not a problem at all. Shadow hiding technique is a compulsory course for every Shadow's Lei. So wherever there are shadows, it is my battlefield. Shadow's Lei Qingming said coldly. His figure quickly came out from behind Mu Yu. Mu Yu's heart was slightly startled. His whole body was already flying in the air, and at the same time, he rushed towards the pulsatilla. The pulsatilla's shadow hiding technique was what Shadow's Lei relied on. As long as he killed these 16 pulsatilla, he should be able to break Shadow's Lei's shadow hiding technique. The sword light reflected the moonlight, looking very cold. The sharp sword Qi instantly shot out. The sword light cut through the lonely cold moon and chopped towards the pulsatilla. However, the 16 pulsatilla easily dodged Mu Yu's shadow swords. Their speed was not the slightest bit slower than Mu Yu's. Shadow's Lei Qingming was tailing Mu Yu from behind. Suddenly, he rushed out from the shadow under Mu Yu's body. Mu Yu's feet touched the ground again. The formation runes surged, and he disappeared in the air. What a powerful shadow! Mu Yu couldn't help but praise this terrifying stealth technique. Shadow's Lei could use the shadows to change his position at will. He could even use the opponent's shadow. This kind of movement method was very close to his Big Dipper constellation formation. This was especially true for people whose assassination speed was not as fast as Shadow's Lei. There was basically no way to dodge. A walker in the shadows, all the shadows were his battlefield. This was Shadow's Lei. No wonder every Shadow's Lei was so frightening. Once you were targeted, it was impossible to guard against them in the night. You had to be alert at all times. Otherwise, a sharp blade would suddenly appear from the shadow under your feet. If Mu Yu didn't have the Big Dipper constellation formation that was not weaker than Shadow's Lei's shadow stealth technique, he would definitely be at a disadvantage with such a large gap in strength. Mu Yu turned around. The shadow swords left his hands. With a mysterious sword force, they split into 9 and then merged into the vast void around Mu Yu. His whole body became incomparably ethereal and light, like a leisurely cloud floating in the desert sky. Shadow's Lei Qingming had already appeared from the shadow below him. A black shadow blade chopped towards Mu Yu. Mu Yu's right hand grasped the void. The formation runes around him rippled. The shadow swords were pulled out from the void by him, and met Shadow's lay, Qing Ming's black shadow blade. The sword light swallowed and spat out, and a tyrannical aura swept out. The sword chi and the blade light burst forth with intense and pure brilliance under the moonlight, bombarding the desert sky. The majestic spiritual energy instantly blasted the sand dune under his feet into a terrifying pit. Muyu retreated a few steps before he could barely stabilize himself. However, the shadow of a pulsatilla just happened to envelop him. Shadow's lay Qing Ming drilled out from the pulsatilla shadow, and a murderous shadow blade flashed past, cutting a huge wound on his back. Muyu's figure flashed and disappeared. Fortunately, he did so. Otherwise, this shadow blade would have split him in half. In the end, Muyu suffered a disadvantage in terms of cultivation. He and Shadow's lay Qing Ming's cultivation were an entire realm apart. In this kind of situation, it was impossible to fight force with force. Not only did the shadow blade create a wound on Muyu's back, it also invaded a tyrannical spiritual energy, constantly destroying the veins in Muyu's body. Shadow's lay Qing Ming appeared a distance away from Muyu, but he did not continue to attack. To be able to dodge our Shadow Slay's shadow concealment technique, your cultivation and speed must be above mine. How can you, a ninth celestial layer out-of-body cultivator, move so quickly? Shadow's lay Qing Ming asked in surprise. If you want to kill me with the shadow concealment technique, I'm afraid that 15 minutes won't be enough. Muyu was too lazy to explain anything. Ordinary array masters who used the Big Dipper constellation formation would be exhausted after 2 or 3 times. However, Muyu clearly did not have this restriction. He had the chaotic yin and yang in his body, which could provide him with an endless supply of spiritual energy to use the formation. In addition, the Big Dipper constellation formation was combined with the Dustfall steps, so it could be used at will and not randomly appear. Therefore, he was able to dodge Shadow's lay Qing Ming's shadow concealment technique. 15 minutes is enough. My shadow blade will scatter when it touches blood and scatter into all the blood and organs in your body. I'm different from other Shadow's lays. My shadow blade can control people. Shadow's lay Qing Ming slowly extended a finger. Muyu was shocked. He felt a sudden surge of powerful spiritual energy in his body. That spiritual energy did not belong to him at all, but it occupied his meridians and controlled his body. He involuntarily followed Shadow's lay Qing Ming and extended a finger, pointing at his opponent. If you're injured by my shadow blade, you'll become my shadow puppet. You'll have to follow my movements. Shadow's lay Qing Ming extended his right hand. A ball of rapidly spinning black spiritual energy appeared in his hand, mixed with an incomparably terrifying destructive power. Muyu also extended his right hand, but nothing appeared in his hand. Shadow's lay Qing Ming was controlling his body, but that did not mean that he could gather the same spiritual energy as Shadow's lay Qing Ming. Shadow's lay Qing Ming waved his hand, and the black spiritual energy in his hand flew towards Muyu. That ball of black spiritual energy enlarged in front of Muyu's eyes and instantly hit Muyu's chest, sending Muyu flying. He crashed into a sand dune, stirring up yellow sand all over the sky. Muyu lay at the bottom of the sand dune and spat out the blood in his mouth. Sure enough, it was too much for an out-of-body stage cultivator to face the 43rd extreme immortal. Shadow's lay Qing Ming appeared beside Muyu. The 16 pulsatilla in the sky circled around Muyu. The pulsatilla's shadow covered Muyu's entire body. The shadow was like a cage, trapping Muyu on the ground, making it impossible for Muyu to break free. I have 16 pulsatilla. The speed of these 16 pulsatilla is not slower than a severed soul stage cultivator. I don't mind telling you, these 16 pulsatilla are all cultivators known for their speed, including 2 extreme immortals. When I approve of the target's speed, I'll use the shadow puppet technique to refine them into my pulsatilla, making them a part of my battle. You should be honored that I've also taken a fancy to your speed. You have the qualifications to become my pulsatilla. Shadows lay, Qingming said indifferently. From beginning to end, apart from those emotionless eyes, shadows lay. Qingming's entire body was just a shadow. Even though he was so close to Mu Yu could not see his exact appearance. Chapter 534. Mu Yu's flesh and blood were being eaten away by the strange force. But the black and white spirit power in his dantian had already gushed out and spread all over his meridians, wrapping around the wounds that had been eaten away and healing them. At the same time, the spirit energy created by the Shadow Blade was also being devoured by the black and white energy in his body. There's so many people who want to kill me. You definitely won't be the last. Mu Yu's eyes darkened. A green formation pattern suddenly lit up in his hand. Little Handsome's mysterious lightning fall. A childish voice came from not far away. Thunder suddenly rumbled in the air, followed by blue sparks flickering. A huge blue sword more than 100 feet long slashed down from the sky. The pulsatilla quickly scattered. The shadow cage trapping Mu Yu also broke by itself. At the same time, the tyrannical sword shadow whistled, exploding where Shadow Killer Qingming was standing. But Shadow Killer Qingming had already disappeared. Little Handsome had one hand on his waist, the other pointing to the sky, his small claws nimbly controlling the blue lightning sword that was many times taller than him, swinging it in the air, full of vigor. The formation pattern under Mu Yu's feet lightly moved, landing outside the sandpit. The 16 Return to Heavens had already scattered. Shadow Killer Qingming slowly appeared under the shadow of the Return to Heavens not far from Mu Yu, saying, "True God's disciple truly lives up to his name, to actually be able to escape my shadow puppet's control." The wound on Mu Yu's chest had already healed. He panted slightly. Ever since the black and white spirit energy in his body was infected by the underworld grass life energy and death energy, he didn't know if it was good or bad. But it couldn't be denied that these two completely different spirit energies were always able to save him at the right time. "Hiding bastard, Little Handsome is here to take care of you." Little Handsome's large sword swung twice in the air, a blue light illuminating the entire desert. Mu Yu looked at the bright moon in the sky. Every shadow killer had learned this terrifying shadow hiding technique. No wonder they were so efficient when killing people and rarely missed. Because there was light, there was a shadow. But what if there was no light? "Little Commander, come back," Mu Yu said in his heart. The wind heart-linking formation connected Little Shuai and Mu Yu together. Both parties knew what they were thinking at this moment. Little Shuai reluctantly put away his huge sword and jumped back into Mu Yu's arms. Mu Yu's fingers flickered, and array patterns shot out from his hand. Then, a black cloud suddenly floated in the sky and instantly covered the bright moonlight. The entire desert was plunged into darkness, and no one could see each other. Qingming's Shadow Kill laughed coldly and said, "You are too naive. Without light, the darkness is just a huge shadow to me. You can't blame me if you want to die." Shadow Killer, as the name suggested, was an assassin who hid in the shadows. They preferred to move out at night and could only rely on their shadows to kill during the day. Every shadow killer had their own method of creating shadows. Qingming relied on the incomparably fast pulsatilla to assassinate his opponent. Once there was no light, the world would fall into darkness, and that would be the time for Shadow Killer to move unhindered. Mu Yu used the formation to create a huge black cloud to cover the bright moon. But it was also equivalent to creating the best battle conditions for Qingming's Shadow Kill. Qingming's Shadow Kill's eyes flickered with a cold light in the darkness. He didn't need to rely on the pulsatilla to move, and his battle strength would increase by another level. He was a person who lived in the darkness, and his vision wasn't affected. He could clearly see Mu Yu's position. His figure moved, and he already appeared beside Mu Yu. Then, the shadow blade in his hand once again slashed towards Mu Yu. "Is that so?" Mu Yu snorted. A dazzling white light suddenly burst out from Mu Yu's body and enveloped his whole body. Mu Yu's whole body was like a bright sun, dispersing the surrounding darkness. Qingming's shadow kill's expression suddenly changed, and his whole body retreated. The pulsatilla promptly blocked in front of him and used Mu Yu's white light to create a shadow, allowing Qingming's shadow kill to stabilize his body. An assassin in the dark, is he so afraid of light? The dazzling light around Mu Yu's body was created by the formation, and this light was completely released, but it didn't affect him at all. The formation under his feet flickered, and he teleported in front of the pulsatilla, dispersing the shadow created by the pulsatilla, and Qingming's shadow kill also disappeared. The 16 pulsatilla scattered, and as long as they were a certain distance away from Mu Yu, they could use the light from Mu Yu's body to create a shadow. Mu Yu's guess was right. Qingming's shadow kill had a powerful shadow stealth technique, and he could appear and disappear unpredictably from his own shadow, and even in the dark night, his speed was even faster. However, this caused his cultivation technique to have the disadvantage of being afraid of light. He could only hide in the shadows and couldn't directly receive any light. In places where there was light, he could only use his shadow to assassinate his opponent. But once the shadow was dispelled by the light, it would be his turn to escape. Where there is light, there is darkness. You are still too inexperienced to defeat me. Qingming's shadow kill was a bit angry. He had never suffered a loss from his shadow stealth technique before. As long as there was a shadow, whether it was day or night, he could easily take the target's life from the shadow. However, Mu Yu was an array master, and the most powerful thing about array masters was that they had all kinds of array masters. Some array masters might not have any lethality, but they could perfectly restrain Qingming's shadow kill's shadow stealth technique. When Mu Yu used himself as a light source, Qingming's shadow kill could no longer approach Mu Yu, because Mu Yu himself couldn't create a shadow. Where there is light, there is darkness. You are right. Mu Yu's right hand surged with white spirit power, and then he hit the desert ground with his palm. With his right hand as the center, the formation pattern quickly spread out, and the mysterious formation pattern intertwined to form a barrier, instantly trapping all 16 pulsatilla wongs in his array formation barrier. The pulsatilla wongs rushed toward the barrier, wanting to escape from Mu Yu's barrier, but the barrier surged with majestic formation patterns, blocking the pulsatilla wongs. This place was full of formation bases, and there were hidden formations that had yet to be activated. They were secretly set up by Master Lu and Situ Yan Tian to help Mu Yu deal with Qingming's shadow kill. Qingming's shadow kill snorted coldly. You want to trap me with this array formation barrier? You are underestimating me. All the pulsatilla wongs gathered together and used the light emitted by Mu Yu to create a shadow, approaching the array formation barrier. Qingming's shadow kill had already stretched out the shadow blade in his hand, and the shadow blade erupted with powerful spirit power. He was confident that he could break Mu Yu's array formation barrier. However, at this moment he felt that something was wrong. With his many years of assassination experience, he immediately took out a piece of black cloth from his hand without hesitation and blocked in front of his eyes. His approach was correct, because the 16 pulsatilla wongs were suddenly wrapped in a strong light, and their original shadows dissipated. The pulsatilla wongs were also turned into light sources by Mu Yu's formation pattern, and Qingming's shadow kill speed no longer had any advantage. The formation pattern in Mu Yu's hand emitted mysterious inscriptions, firmly attached to the 16 pulsatilla wongs, turning them into 16 light sources, and all of a sudden, Qingming's shadow kill's hidden shadow technique was ineffective. Qingming's shadow kill used a piece of black cloth to block in front of him. He stood in the shadow of the black cloth, and his heart was furious to the extreme. I didn't expect that the one who could force me to this point was actually an array formation master. Qingming's shadow kill's voice was very cold. Although array formation masters were very powerful, they were famous for their weakness. He had killed some array formation masters before, but those array formation masters were never as fast as Mu Yu. If he underestimated an array formation master, he wouldn't even know how he died. Mu Yu's hand once again transformed into countless formation patterns, fusing them into the formation barrier around him. Then, the formation barrier he created suddenly emitted a terrifying light, instantly dispersing the shadows created by Qingming's shadow kill using the black cloth. Anything that shined light would produce shadows, but once the light was too bright, it could fade the shadows created by objects. And shadows that weren't dark enough couldn't be used as a foothold for the hidden shadow technique. Bastard! Qingming's shadow kill roared. He was originally just a shadow hiding in all kinds of shadows. But his shadow was suddenly exposed under the light, and his entire shadow began to tremble violently. Countless shadows were dispelled from Qingming's shadow kill's body, as if shadow fragments were forcibly peeled off from his body, finally revealing his original appearance. It was a skinny young man with a pale complexion. The paleness made it seem like he had never seen the sun since he was born. There was no trace of blood on his face, and it wouldn't be an exaggeration to say he was dead. Qingming's shadow kill was wearing a black outfit. He was perfectly fine after the shadow fragments on his body were dispelled by the light. He stood opposite Muyu with a cold expression. Ever since I became a shadow kill, no one has ever seen my true appearance. You're the first one, Qingming's shadow kill said with a murderous look. Assassins who hid in the dark only liked to kill with a hidden shadow technique, but it didn't mean he was afraid of light. Muyu had used his formation to force Qingming's shadow kill to reveal his true appearance, so he no longer needed to rely on the shadows to move around. Without the shadows, I believe you're a lot weaker, Muyu said. Even if I don't rely on the shadows, it's more than enough to kill you. 2 black daggers appeared in Qingming's shadow's hands. These 2 daggers were the 2 incomparably sharp shadow blades from just now. It was just that without the support of the shadows, their original appearance was revealed. The shadow blades flew out of his hands, and sharp spiritual power burst out, instantly shattering the formation barrier created by Muyu, causing all the light to dissipate. Muyu's gaze turned cold. After all, Qingming's shadow kill was at the spirit severing stage. Even if his hidden shadow technique was broken, his cultivation was still very strong, and he couldn't be underestimated. Qingming's shadow blade slashed at him from a tricky angle. Muyu leaped up to meet it, and the formation ripples on his body rippled. He pulled out the shadow clone sword in the air and collided with the shadow blade. However, the power of a spirit severing stage's attack was quite terrifying, and it instantly sent the shadow clone sword in Muyu's hand flying. Muyu didn't panic. He just turned around and pulled out another shadow clone sword from the void to deflect the power of the shadow blade. Qingming's shadow's strength was too strong. If Muyu wanted to fight Qingming's shadow, he could only use the formation of the 9 guiding heavenly sword to deflect the opponent's power. Otherwise, if they fought head-on, the one who would be injured would definitely be Muyu. However, at this moment, Qingming's shadow suddenly stopped. He frowned and said, 15 minutes is up. At the beginning, Qingming's shadow had said that if Muyu could last 15 minutes in his hands, he would treat this assassination mission as a failure. From the beginning until now, Muyu had been entangled with Qingming's shadow for exactly 15 minutes. I'll let you live for a few days. This mission will be considered a failure. Qingming's shadow snorted coldly. You don't plan to kill me? Muyu mocked. There's no need for me to do anything. Tianbu Y will kill you. It's rare for the 8 sects to join forces to help Tianbu Y. His strength is not what it used to be. Qingming's shadow glanced at Muyu disdainfully and turned to leave. However, the surroundings suddenly surged with powerful formation ripples again, enveloping Qingming's shadow. You don't plan to kill me, but I plan to kill you, Muyu said calmly. His eyes flickered with black and white light. The biting, cold, killing intent was like a torrential river that instantly filled the entire formation. Muyu didn't like people always looking at him with a self-righteous gaze. Chapter 535. The wind and sand in the desert continued to wreak havoc, bringing with it a slight chill. The ground was already crisscrossed with ravines. The destruction caused by the 2 powerful cultivators was too horrible to look at. Shadow Killer Qingming turned around and stared at Muyu as if he had heard a very funny joke. He sneered. You want to kill me? He had always been the one to kill others. No one had ever wanted to kill him. I hate being threatened, and I hate people who think too highly of themselves even more. If you want to kill me, then I'll kill you. Muyu waved his hand, and formation runes rippled out. He had never liked killing people, but after experiencing so many things, he understood that being merciful to the enemy was being cruel to oneself. He never planned on letting Qingming live from the start. You're just an out-of-body stage formation master? You think you're worthy? Shadow Killer Qingming sneered. I have a question. Does Tian Yuehin often pay you a high price to help Tian Bu Waiting get rid of dissidents? Muyu asked with interest. Shadow Killer looked at Muyu. I'm only in charge of receiving money. Then he is. Muyu despised Tian Bu Wai to the extreme. Every time Tian Bu Wai wanted to fight other extreme immortals, Shadow's Lei Qingming would secretly help him. What a disgusting deal. I don't understand one thing. Why didn't the Eight Gates ask you to kill Sikong Chiwen? Muyu asked. Shadow Killer remained silent. I understand. You don't have the confidence to deal with Sikong Chiwen. Muyu's eyes flashed with black and white formation runes. Different people have different prices. It's not that we don't have confidence, but that no one can afford to kill Sikong Chiwen. A black shadow blade appeared in Shadow Killer Qingming's pale hand again. The surrounding yellow sand suddenly exploded, and powerful formation runes formed a pillar of light that shot into the sky, forming a huge 8 trigrams that trapped Shadow Killer Qingming and Muyu inside. Muyu had already asked Master Lu to lay down many powerful trapping formations in this desert. These formations were originally fixed formations, but Muyu had a powerful treasure like the primal chaos yin and yang. He could forcibly move all the fixed formations to his feet. Every array master couldn't set up a powerful fixed array in a short period of time other than their own array techniques. Even Muyu, who had the chaos yin and yang, couldn't do it. He could only set up a powerful array technique with the help of the array hall and the array runestone. The power of a fixed array formation was much stronger than that of a shift array formation cast by an array master. If he wanted to defeat Muyu, who had a much higher cultivation level than Muyu, he had no choice but to rely on a fixed array formation. Muyu let Master Lu come to this desert to set up the array, not only because Master Lu had much more experience in setting up arrays than him, but more importantly, he knew that Shadow Killer Qingming must have been spying on his every move near the Mu residence. If he came to set up the array himself, Shadow Killer Qingming would definitely know and wouldn't walk into the traps so easily, so he could only rely on Master Lu. Shadow Killer Qingming had already turned into an afterimage and pounced. His speed had decreased a lot with the help of the shadow, but it was still too fast for Muyu, who was in the out-of-body stage. The shadow blade mixed with a sharp black light slashed over. The formation runes under Muyu's feet swayed, and he appeared behind Qingming and waved his hand at Qingming. Halfway through the swing, the shadow sword had already appeared in his hand from the void. A green light flashed on the shadow sword and slashed at Qingming. However, Qingming had already turned around. The shadow blade and the shadow sword collided, creating sparks, and violent spiritual power swept out again. Muyu's shadow sword slashed at Qingming from different angles. Each sword move was extremely domineering. At this moment, he was already evenly matched with Qingming's shadow blade. After Shadow Killer lost his shadow, his strength decreased a lot, and even his strength was not as strong as before. However, Shadow Killer Qingming was not an ordinary person. His reaction was quite fast, and he didn't give Muyu any chance to take advantage of any loopholes. The shadow blade around him was impenetrable. Is that all you've got? Shadow Killer Qingming sneered. The two of them had collided more than 100 times in a short period of time, and neither of them could do anything to the other. There seemed to be more than a dozen Muyu around them. Always before the afterimage dissipated, Muyu had already appeared in another direction. He had already used his speed to the extreme, but he still couldn't hurt Qingming at all. Muyu tiptoed and pulled away from Qingming. At the same time, 5 black and white formation runes appeared in his hand. Then, the black and white formation runes instantly turned into thousands of vigorous swallows. Countless swallows swept at Qing Ming from different directions in a regular pattern. The shadow blade turned into a black light that filled the sky, scattering the black and white swallows coming at him. Every swallow that was hit by the shadow blade would shatter into countless black and white formation runes that floated in the air. In the blink of an eye, all the swallows had been shredded by Qing Ming's shadow blade. Although an array master's burst of power is high, I want to know how many times you can use array techniques after using so many array techniques. Just like everyone in the cultivation world, Shadow Killer Qing Ming also knew the array master's weakness. Although array techniques were powerful array techniques required an array foundation with abundant spirit chi as the foundation. Many innate array foundations had boundless spirit chi, but no matter how boundless the spirit chi was, there would be a time when it was exhausted. Ordinary array masters couldn't continue fighting. But how can you beat an ordinary array master? It should be enough to kill you. Mu Yu's hands moved the formation runes around him, and his spirit chi spread out at an indiscernible speed. The formation runes that were scattered by Qing Ming's shadow blade suddenly all seemed to move, and they all covered Qing Ming's body. Qing Ming's spirit chi vibrated, wanting to disperse all the formation rune fragments in front of him. But his expression suddenly changed, because those formation rune fragments weren't affected by his spirit chi. They directly passed through the spirit chi barrier he created and merged into his body. Shadow Killer Qing Ming frowned. No matter who it was, having something unknown enter their body wouldn't be fun. He mobilized all the spirit chi in his body, wanting to get rid of those formation rune fragments. But after the formation rune fragments entered his body, they disappeared without a trace. Is your array technique just a bluff? Shadow Killer Qing Ming didn't feel anything strange at all. Those formation rune fragments didn't affect him at all. Formation runes surged in Mu Yu's eyes, but Shadow Killer Qing Ming had already changed in his eyes. Those swallows of his were called nimble swallows returned to nest. They were the same as the Qingyan swallows' sound stealing formation. They didn't have any killing power and wouldn't cause any harm. After they were shattered by the enemy, they would be immune to any spirit chi. As long as they successfully merged into the enemy's body, then they would begin to detect the flaws and weak points of each person's body. Every time the opponent attacked, those formation runes would gather at the flaws of the move. As the caster, Mu Yu could clearly see those formation runes. As long as Mu Yu could successfully hit the opponent's weak point, he would definitely be able to defeat the opponent. However, because everyone knew where their weaknesses were when they attacked, they would deliberately protect their weak point from being broken. If Mu Yu wanted to kill Qing Ming, he had to attack in a way that Qing Ming couldn't react in time. Mu Yu once again intertwined with Qing Ming. The shadow swords and shadow blades collided in the air, creating a huge wave of spirit chi. It instantly exploded in the desert, turning the surrounding yellow sand into fine powder. His figure appeared on the upper left of Qing Ming. The moment the shadow swords slashed down, Qing Ming had already made a counterattack. However, Mu Yu's eyes had already seen the weak point on Qing Ming's left ribs. He kicked out with the tip of his foot, and another shadow sword was kicked out from the void, stabbing towards Qing Ming's weak point on his left ribs. Qing Ming was slightly shocked. Mu Yu's way of attacking was too strange. The shadow swords seemed to be everywhere. To Mu Yu, the sword wasn't just controlled by the hand. Qing Ming forcefully twisted his body away, and at the same time, used the other shadow blade to protect his weak point. With a ding sound, Qing Ming had already jumped out and dodged Mu Yu's attack. However, at this moment, Qing Ming's other weak point appeared on his shoulder. Mu Yu followed like a shadow. Without waiting for Qing Ming to stabilize his body, Mu Yu's sword once again stabbed towards Qing Ming's shoulder. Qing Ming's shoulder was instantly stabbed by Mu Yu. He had originally gathered all the spirit chi in his body, but with Mu Yu attacking his weak point, the spirit chi that he had gathered instantly dissipated. He couldn't gather any strength, and in an instant, he He was kicked in the chest by Mu Yu, flying out heavily. Qingming looked at Mu Yu in shock and anger. He, a dignified spirit-severing stage cultivator, was actually sent flying by a ninth heaven of out-of-body stage. This was simply a great humiliation. How could you possibly know my weak point? Qingming's voice was a little cold. When everyone used a move, they would gather their spirit qi in different places to release the strongest force. However, every time they gathered spirit qi in their body, there would definitely be a gathering point. Once this gathering point was broken, then the move would be powerless and unable to release its true power. Very few people could accurately know where the opponent was gathering spirit qi, because different moves would gather spirit qi in different places. Cultivators could use many moves in the time it takes for a spark to fly off a piece of flint. It was almost impossible to find the weak points of these moves in an instant unless one's strength was much stronger than the opponent's. Only then could one defeat the opponent in an instant. Shadow Killer Qingming's cultivation was much higher than Mu Yu's. He really couldn't understand what was going on. I don't want to tell you. Mu Yu was too lazy to explain anything. The strong swallow returns to nest he used was an innate formation technique that Master Lu had taught him. For Mu Yu, this formation technique didn't need to consider the problem of the formation base. However, because it was used on Shadow Killer Qingming, who was in the spirit-severing stage, it still consumed a lot of spirit qi. After the formation technique showed Qingming's weak point 10 times, this formation technique could no longer be maintained. At that time, it would be more difficult for him to kill Qingming. In the fight between Mu Yu and Qingming just now, Qingming's weak point had already appeared twice. Do you really think I only have the shadow hiding technique? Qingming glanced at the wound on his shoulder. The spirit qi in his body moved slightly to stop the bleeding. This wound only caused him to be unable to breathe. Mu Yu had taken the initiative to create this wound. It wasn't enough to cause him to be seriously injured. Mu Yu didn't say anything. His figure had already disappeared from the spot. In the blink of an eye, he appeared behind Qingming. The shadow sword in his hand stabbed towards Qingming's back again. His eyes had been watching the changes in Qingming's body. When Qingming swung his shadow blade to block Mu Yu again, his weak point appeared on his right elbow again. The shadow sword jumped out of the void and chopped towards Qingming's right elbow. However, he suddenly realized that Qingming was still blocking in the same spot, but the weak point on his right elbow had already disappeared. Mu Yu frowned slightly. A strong sense of danger invaded his entire body. He pointed back with his left hand. The shadow sword appeared from the void. At the same time, the shadow blade collided with the shadow sword. He didn't know when Qingming had appeared behind him. If he was a second late, Mu Yu would have been seriously injured by a shadow blade. The two of them pulled apart the distance again and looked at each other from afar. Although I don't know how you can always see through my weak points, you will definitely die. Qingming smiled coldly. His figure suddenly appeared behind Mu Yu. Then, Mu Yu was shocked. His shoulder had been firmly clamped by Qingming. He couldn't even activate the Big Dipper constellation formation. The speed of the clear sight spell suddenly doubled, and it was even faster than the shadow concealment spell just now. Chapter 536. Kacha. A huge force came from Mu Yu's shoulder. Intense pain instantly spread to the right side of his body. He could only pull out the shadow sword from the air to block in front of his chest. His entire body was swept away by Qingming. He once again saw the weak spot on Qingming's knee. However, his speed did not allow him to make any counterattacks. He could only watch this fleeting opportunity. However, Qingming had already appeared in front of his chest in midair. He stepped on his chest and fiercely slammed him into the sand dune. The weak spot on Qingming's calf disappeared again. So fast, Mu Yu's body touched the formation patterns on ground. A gentle aura came from the 8 trigrams formation and dissipated the impact on his body. He flipped back and steadied himself at the edge of the 8 trigrams formation. Shadow Wolf Kill. Qingming threw the 2 shadow blades high up. The shadow blades turned into 2 black lights in the air. Then the black lights gradually grew bigger and merged together. Immediately after, they formed a huge black wolf. It roared in the air. The violent aura shook the 8 trigrams formation until it was on the verge of collapse. The black wolf flickered with a dark light. Its hollow eyes had already firmly locked onto Mu Yu's aura. Then the black wolf drew an afterimage in the air and pounced toward Mu Yu. The wolf's claws stirred up wind. With a blow that could destroy heaven and earth, the air around the claws seemed to become somewhat distorted. If he was hit by this claw, Mu Yu did not believe that he would survive. Wind, fall, dragon howls to the sky. The most powerful part of Mu Yu's 9 heavenly sword guides was that it could use the formation to increase the power of the sword technique. However, all formations were based on the 8 trigrams. Therefore, the 9 heavenly sword guides combined with the 8 trigrams formation raised the sword technique to a new level. Mu Yu's spiritual power was of the wood attribute. When he used the 5th move of the 9 heavenly sword guides, he used the 8 trigrams formation's wind position. At this moment, Mu Yu had already flashed to the southwest of the 8 trigrams formation. He used the wind as the source to activate the entire 8 trigrams formation. The wind pattern of the 8 trigrams formation lit up with alternating black and white patterns. At the same time, the 8 shadow swords suddenly rose from the ground from the 8 directions of the 8 trigrams formation. The 8 shadow swords kept humming, and then each sword soared into the sky one after another. The tip of the sword pressed against the tail of the sword, twisting and rotating. A dragon's roar reverberated through the sky as the green dragon vine rushed out from Mu Yu's hand. It transformed into a huge body and opened its mouth to devour the 8 shadow swords. At the same time, its dragon body seemed to have transformed into an insufferably brilliant dragon sword. With a whistling sound, it brought along a sharp sword chi as it met the terrifying wolf shadow head-on. Boom! With a deafening sound, the formation patterns surged and the yellow sand swirled. The huge impact of the spiritual energy caused the 8 trigrams formation to tremble violently. The black and white formation patterns under Mu Yu's feet transformed into spirit patterns that firmly locked his feet so that he would not be blown away by the impact. When the dust settled, Qingming was still standing in the same place. The shadow wolf in the air landed beside him. The dragon vine also stared fiercely at the opposite side with its bell-sized eyes. In the collision just now, the dragon vine and the shadow wolf were evenly matched. No one could do anything to the other. However, Qingming's heart was in turmoil. His shadow wolf kill was a very fierce move. Even a spirit-severing stage self-cultivator might not be able to block it. However, when he used this move today, he was only able to fight to a draw with Mu Yu, who was in the out-of-body stage. This was really hard for him to accept. How can you still use such a powerful formation? Shadow Killer Qingming suppressed the throbbing in his heart and asked. He, a spirit-severing stage shadow killer, was actually unable to kill an out-of-body stage target. If this spread out, he would be a huge joke. He could not accept this result. As a shadow killer, his pride was seriously challenged. Chatterbox. Mu Yu still didn't want to talk nonsense with Qingming. What he cared about was that Qingming's weak points had already appeared 5 times, and he didn't have a chance to break through them. If this continued, the situation would be very bad for him. Although he relied on the dragon vines helped to display the 5th move of the 9 guide heavenly sword, falling dragon roaring to the sky. This move also consumed a lot of his spiritual energy. At this moment, he didn't have much spiritual energy left in his body. He took out a spirit-returning pill and ate it. However, the spirit-returning pill that could normally instantly recover all the spiritual energy consumed by an out-of-body stage cultivator didn't have any significant effect on him at this moment. He had already used a lot of formation skills. He didn't need to worry about the spiritual energy needed by the formation skills, but using the formation skills consumed his own spiritual energy. This was a huge problem. Ever since Mu Yu's body was transformed by the black and white spiritual energy, a very strange phenomenon occurred. Although he had more spiritual energy than before, This also caused him to need a long time to recover after consuming too much spiritual energy. One spirit returning pill couldn't completely replenish the spiritual energy in his body at this moment. The amount of spiritual energy in his body was far beyond what the spirit returning pill could replenish. One spirit returning pill could only be taken once in 2 days. Taking the second one would have no effect at all. Therefore, even if Muyu had a lot of spirit returning pills on him, it was useless. I don't believe that you can hold on any longer. Go! Qingming patted the shadow wolf beside him. The shadow wolf immediately roared and rushed towards Muyu. Muyu, that dog's strength is far beyond mine. I can delay it for a while with the help of the formation. You have to hurry. The dragon vine's body flashed with sword chi. Once again, it faced the shadow wolf. The wolf's howl and the dragon's roar intertwined. The sword chi was everywhere, reverberating in the huge 8 trigrams formation. I got it. Muyu panted slightly. His eyes were fixed on the shadow killing Qingming opposite him. Even if it was any other formation master in the out-of-body stage who used formation techniques like Muyu, they might only be able to use the Big Dipper constellation formation 2 or 3 times before they couldn't continue. Even if they knew Muyu's Feng Sun Luo, Long Xiaotian, they definitely couldn't use it. This was because the Big Dipper constellation formation consumed a lot of spiritual energy and spiritual energy. Muyu had endless spiritual energy. He also had more spiritual energy than ordinary people. However, at this point, he was already a spent arrow. When Qingming used the Shadow Wolf Slash, he had to personally control the Shadow Wolf. However, Muyu's Feng Sun Luo and Long Xiaotian didn't need to because the Dragon Vine had its own consciousness. Muyu estimated that the spiritual energy in his body could support him to use the Big Dipper constellation formation 3 more times. If he couldn't kill Qingming after using the Big Dipper constellation formation 3 times, then he would be in danger. Another weak spot appeared on Qingming's body. This weak spot was on his right wrist. At this moment, Muyu's 8 shadow swords were combined with the Dragon Vine. Only Mu Ling's sword was left in his hand. Mu Ling's sword's body was intertwined with black and white. Life and death eroded each other. It was still in that tattered appearance. He seized the opportunity. His figure disappeared on the spot. In the blink of an eye, he appeared in front of Qingming. Mu Ling's sword slashed towards Qingming's right wrist. How did you? Qingming's face was extremely shocked. He needed to guide the Shadow Wolf to deal with the Dragon Vine. He originally thought that Muyu also needed to control the Dragon Vine. Who would have thought that Muyu actually completely broke away from the Dragon Vine and came to kill him alone? In a hurry, Qingming's left hand immediately covered his right wrist, covering the weak spot. Mu Ling's sword seemed to be rather slow, but it directly left a deep wound on Qingming's arm. Qingming kicked out with spiritual power. Muyu could only temporarily retreat. Qingming's nimble swallow returns to nest could still show the weak spot twice. Muyu could only teleport twice. The situation was getting worse. Muyu no longer hesitated. Mu Ling's sword suddenly turned into a towering tree. This tree had the appearance of a Bodhi tree. However, at this moment, the Bodhi tree's branches were all black. Only the leaves were verdant and glistening. However, the veins in the center of each leaf were white. It was very strange. Countless leaves floated down. They seemed to be disorderly, but each leaf carried a sharp, killing intent as it surged towards Qingming. Muyu quickly landed on Qingming's left side under the cover of countless leaves. He needed to force Qingming to attack. Only when Qingming counterattacked would his weak spot appear. You're courting death. Qingming snorted coldly. The 16 pulsatilla suddenly broke free from Muyu's formation. The sky full of flying feathers welcomed the leaves. After the pulsatilla stopped glowing, shadows appeared on their bodies again. Qingming's mouth revealed a trace of a strange smile. His figure had already disappeared into the pulsatilla shadows. Dark sky, murder shadow. Qingming made a very strange sound. It was low and obscure. It was unbearable to look at. As if shrouded in the dark night, a cloud of black aura suddenly appeared in the 8 trigrams formation. This cloud of black aura was like a black hole. It tore all the light from Mu Yu's body out and swallowed it. For a moment, the surroundings became dark again. Only the light from 8 trigrams formation shone on the two people. Mu Yu's shadow also appeared in the 8 trigrams formation. Dark Sky Murder Shadow was the strongest move of the Shadow Assassins. When the light restricted the shadow concealment technique, they could rely on the Dark Sky Murder Shadow to absorb the target's light and reactivate the shadow concealment technique. However, this move was very taxing on the body. Even if Qing Ming used Dark Sky Murder Shadow, he would be trapped in the shadow on the spot and unable to move for 2 hours. Therefore, unless it was absolutely necessary, he would not use this move. However, Mu Yu had already forced him into a desperate situation. He knew that if he did not use Dark Sky Murder Shadow now, he would most likely die in Mu Yu's hands. Qing Ming could see that Mu Yu's spiritual power was also at the point of being a lamp without oil. After using Dark Sky Murder Shadow, as long as he could kill Mu Yu, even if he was trapped in the shadow on the spot and unable to move for 15 minutes, it would not matter. Let's see how you dodge this time. Qing Ming appeared in Mu Yu's shadow. The shadow wolf in the air had also disappeared. It turned back into 2 shadow blades and returned to Qing Ming's hands. Qing Ming's mouth revealed a vicious smile. He stabbed towards Mu Yu's heart from the back. Mu Yu, be careful! Long Tongue roared and rushed towards Mu Yu. He wanted to help Mu Yu dodge this sure-kill attack. However, everything was too late. Mu Yu's spiritual power was completely exhausted at this moment. There was no time for him to dodge. Before he could even turn his head, a black blade had already appeared in front of his chest and pierced through his heart. Qing Ming reached out and grabbed Mu Yu's neck. The disciple of a true god. To be able to force me to this point, you're really amazing. However, this is as far as you go. A huge force suddenly erupted from his hand and acted on Mu Yu's neck. Gotcha! Qing Ming's face suddenly changed. The sound he heard was actually the sound of trees breaking. Chapter 537. Qing Ming lowered his head in disbelief and saw that his chest had caved in. 2 thick branches extended from Mu Yu's body and instantly crushed Qing Ming's ribs and destroyed his heart. Yu, how is this possible? Qing Ming looked at Mu Yu, whose neck he was holding, and asked with difficulty, how is this possible? Do you really think you can catch me? Mu Yu's tired voice came from behind Qing Ming. Meanwhile, Mu Yu, who was being held by Qing Ming, slowly turned into a branch. The hand that crushed Qing Ming's ribs was formed from a branch controlling wood. Isn't this the ability of the Mu Yumon? Qing Ming wanted to turn his head and look at Mu Yu, but the side effect of Shadow Sky Murder had already bound him tightly in the shadow, making him unable to move. In fact, even if he could move, he would be powerless because his heart was using a terrifying suction force. The life force in Qing Ming's body poured into the branch like a river that broke through a dam. You don't need to know. Mu Yu panted heavily and said slowly behind Qing Ming. Mu Yu, who was caught by Qing Ming, was a wooden puppet formed by Mu Ling. Mu Yu cast an illusion array on Mu Ling, making it look no different from himself. Even Qing Ming didn't notice anything strange. When Qing Ming caught Mu Ling, his weak point was exposed. Mu Ling's sword instantly turned into 2 branches and broke Qing Ming's weak point, destroying Qing Ming's weak point and destroying Qing Ming's heart. The whole process happened in the blink of an eye. Mu Yu activated the Big Dipper constellation formation to escape from Qing Ming's pursuit. At this moment, the wooden puppet had turned back into Mu Ling's sword. Mu Ling's sword crazily devoured Qing Ming's life force, converting all of his life force into its own power. A faint white light drilled out of Qing Ming's body, trying to escape. However, this strange white light couldn't escape Mu Ling's suction force and was pulled into the sword by Mu Ling. With the life force of a severed soul stage cultivator entering the body, the 3 holes on Mu Ling's sword actually healed. Shadow Slay's extreme immortal mark had already left his hand and was flying toward Mu Yu's wrist, covering the extreme immortal mark he had obtained from Tian Kaiyu. Mu Yu was already exhausted. He did not have any ability to stop the extreme immortal's mark from attaching to his body. The 43-foot extreme immortal mark appeared on his wrist, but he did not have the energy to deal with it. You scare me to death. I thought you were killed by Qing Ming. Dragonvine had also rushed to Mu Yu's side. Seeing that Mu Yu was fine, they let out a sigh of relief. Big Earthworm, why are you so surprised? Why can't you say anything nice? With me around, how come Mu Yu die? Xiao Shuai crawled out from Mu Yu's clothes and took out an apple from somewhere. Little mouse, you didn't do anything the whole time, and you still have the nerve to say that. Dragonvine was furious. What do you know? Didn't I show my prowess just now? Were you scared silly by my prowess? You didn't even see Xiao Shuai's dark sky, Thunderfall? Moreover, I'm in charge of logistics. If anything happens to you, I'll take responsibility. If nothing happens, I'll cheer for you. It's also indispensable. Xiao Shuai said proudly. Mu Yu lay on the ground. The 8 trigrams formation around him began to weaken. Tonight's battle with Shadows Lei, who was in the spirit-severing stage, had almost hollowed out his body. However, it also made him realize something. He struggled to get up, then sat cross-legged and entered into a meditative state. Aya, Mu Yu seems to be about to break through. Big Earthworm, hurry up and stand guard. Don't let anyone come near here, Xiao Shuai said as he wagged his tail. What about you? Dragonvine asked. Of course I'm in charge of logistics. Are you stupid? Xiao Shuai finished the apple in 2 to 3 bites. Then, he wagged his tail, and all the spiritual energy in the desert surged toward Mu Yu. Clearwater City, Mu Residence's main hall. These few days, the Mu family followed Mu Yu's instructions and didn't leave the Mu residence. At this moment, everyone was gathered in the Mu Residence's main hall. Everyone's faces were filled with anxiety. This was because ever since Mu Yu left the Mu residence, it had already been 5 days. However, there was no news from him. Everyone in Clearwater City was spreading the news that Mu Yu was afraid of Sikong Chiwen and Tianbu Wait. However, only the Mu family knew that Mu Yu went to deal with Shadows Lei, Qingming alone. Tomorrow was the day that Sikong Chiwen challenged Tianbu Wait and Mu Yu. However, Mu Yu still hadn't returned. Father, will something happen to Mu Yu Gij? Mu Xian asked anxiously as she tugged on Mu Rongshuan's sleeve. Mu Rongshuan was also worried. However, he still said calmly, Lil Xen be good. Mu Yu will be fine. Don't forget that he's a true God's disciple. Then why isn't Mu Yu Gij back yet? Mu Xian asked. Mu Hao walked to his sister and held her hand. Little Xen, don't worry. Mu Yu Gij needs to deal with the bad guy. After that, he'll naturally come back. Well, big brother Mu Yu will definitely beat the bad guy to a pulp, won't he? Mu Xian showed a firm smile. Mu Hao pursed his lips. Not only him, but everyone in the Mu family also felt an inexplicable sense of panic. Everyone knew what the bad guy meant. It was Shadows Lei Qingming, the 43rd extreme immortal. His cultivation level was in the severed soul stage. He was 1 stage higher than Mu Yu, who was in the out-of-body stage. The difference in power was like heaven and earth. Mu Zixing suddenly stood up and walked outside. Zixing, stop. Where are you going? Mu Tianhe yelled. I'm going to find my son. Mu Zixing said stiffly. That's Shadows Lei Qingming. What can you do? Do you know how many people outside are watching our Wood Clan's every move? Once you go out, how many people will be watching you? What if there are people with bad intentions? Mu Tianhe scolded. Mu Zixing clenched his fist. 20 years ago, I couldn't protect him. 20 years later, I still have to watch him take risks alone. What kind of father am I? Even if I have to die, I will protect him. Mu Tianhe sighed. At this moment, he also regretted letting Mu Yu leave the Mu mansion alone. But the threat of Shadows Lei Qingming was not a joke. If this hidden danger was not eliminated, Mu Yu would always be in danger. No one in the Mu family could help him. The only person who could resolve this crisis was Mu Yu himself. You're not the only one here who is worried about him. Mu Tianhe sighed. I am his father. Mu Zixing emphasized. Mu Yu is the hope of all of us. His matter is not something that can be solved just because you call him father. Mu Tianhe raised his voice. Mu Zixing's entire body trembled. His heart was greatly tormented. After struggling for a moment, he finally sat down again. Mu Tianhe looked at Master Lu and said respectfully, "Master Lu, what do you think we should do now?" Master Lu said in a low voice, "We can only wait. Mu Yu is still alive. I'm sure of that." The Chaos Yin Yang was originally divided into two supreme treasures, the Formation Glyph Stone and the Formation Hall. These two treasures had always been guarding the Formation faction and the Glyph faction. Their auras would imperceptibly transfer to every Formation Master and Glyph Master. Therefore, when the Chaos Yin Yang recognized a Master, as long as any Formation Master or Glyph Master thought of the words Chaos Yin Yang, the supreme aura of the Formation Glyph Tao would immediately affect them. That Formation Master or Glyph Master would be involuntarily affected by this aura and unable to resist. The aura of the Chaos Yin Yang was extremely powerful. This aura seemed to be directly branded into the souls of every Formation Master and Glyph Master. Once something happened to the Master of the Chaos Yin Yang, the pressure on their hearts would dissipate, and the people of the Formation faction and Glyph faction would sense it. Master Lu had been thinking about the Chaos Yin Yang for the past few days. The aura of the Chaos Yin Yang had shrouded his heart and could not dissipate. Therefore, he was certain that nothing had happened to Mu Yu. However, while he was certain of this, the Mu clan was not. That was why they were so anxious. Tomorrow is the day Sikong Chiwen challenges Tian Bulai and Mu Yu. I wonder if Mu Yu will be able to make it back in time. Kai Lai was not worried, because he was the one who understood Mu Yu the most among these people. Mu Yu would often turn misfortunes into blessings and do unexpected things. He was already used to it. As long as Mu Yu can make it back, then we don't have to care about the two of them. Mu Tianhe shook his head slightly. Everyone was silent. Shadow Killer Qing Ming's ranking was even higher than Sikong Chiwen and Tian Bulai. If Mu Yu could escape from Shadow Killer Qing Ming's hands safely, then Sikong Chiwen and Tian Bulai would not be able to do anything to Mu Yu. However, now that there was no news of Mu Yu, their worries were not unfounded. In Clearwater City's Bet Must Win Casino, the bets on the three of them would end at midnight. Because Mu Yu had left Clearwater City for no reason, no one dared to bet on Mu Yu these few days. In order to encourage everyone to bet on Mu Yu, the casino even set the odds to 50. This meant that if Mu Yu was the final winner, then anyone who bet on Mu Yu would get 50 times the return. Even so, there were only a few people who bet on Mu Yu winning. Sikong Chiwen and Tian Bulai's bets were completely tied. Countless dots of light had accumulated. Some nosy people counted carefully and realized that at least 200 million spirit stones had been placed in this casino over the past few days. This was a rather frightening number because there were more than 100 strange bets. These bets were all meticulously calculated by Ying to minimize the losses. Therefore, no matter who won in the end, the gambling house would not suffer a loss. Instead, they would make a huge profit. There was basically no one in the casino at night, but at this time, 3 people walked in. None of the 3 were ordinary people. Their auras were steady and restrained, and it seemed to make the empty casino somewhat oppressive. If I bet on Sikong Chiwen winning, will the two of you beat me up? Shimin Wuji opened his fan with a walla sound and leisurely looked at the 3 big light beams before his eyes. Among them, 2 of the big light beams were very conspicuous. Only Mu Yu's light beam had pitifully few people betting. Cheng Yan walked silently to Mu Yu's pillar of light and threw in 1,000,000 spirit stones. Are you so sure that little brother Mu Yu will win? Shimin Wuji laughed. Cheng Yan looked at Shimin Wuji and said calmly, I'm his senior brother. If he loses, I'll bet on him too. Also, I've been a little tight on money recently. I think Mu Yu will earn some money for me. Cheng Yan was the only one who could do something like this when someone who was short on cash was willing to pay 1,000,000 at once. Without another word, Luo Shang also invested 1,000,000 spirit stones in Mu Yu. I thought you didn't like your little junior brother. Shimin Wuji looked at Luo Shang in surprise. He had already been dragged by Luo Shang to save Mu Yu twice. Of course I don't like him. If he loses, then this million spirit stones will be his hush money. He can forget about calling me senior brother in the future. I find it embarrassing. Luo Shang said calmly. To be honest, I also don't like Sikong Chiwen and Heaven Doesn't Wait. Especially Heaven Doesn't Wait. He always has a fake smile on his face. I hate him. Shimin Wuji also bet 1,000,000 spirit stones on Muyu. Can your own people bet in your casino? Cheng Yin asked. This casino is not mine, but Du Being's. I remember that he still owes me 253,838 spirit stones. Shimin Wuji said leisurely. This number was not bad. We didn't come here just to bet on Muyu. Luo Shang said. What's so good about those three people's battle? It attracted so many people. Next time when I challenge Luo Shang, I'll spread the news. There will be a lot of beauties coming to support me. Shimin Wuji shook his head and stretched. Luo Shang coldly glanced at him. Chapter 538. Clearwater City's sky had always been blue. As an oasis in the desert, the inside and outside of the city seemed to be two different worlds. Due to the existence of the Great City Protection Array, Clearwater City kept the heat of the desert outside. The temperature in Clearwater City was very comfortable all year round. Outside the city walls were green poplars that could resist the invasion of the wind and sand. Generally speaking, cultivators didn't like to wander around the desert when they had nothing better to do. The scorching heat was unbearable. However, Clearwater City was very empty today. There were only a few old, weak women and children who didn't have any cultivation. The originally bustling streets were empty now. It was a stark contrast to the bustling streets from a while ago. All the cultivators rushed out of Clearwater City. Braving the heat, they excitedly headed to the Desert of Death to watch the battle between the three of them. To be exact, it was two people. Because no one had found any trace of Muyu in Clearwater City, they all thought that Muyu wouldn't come today. Outside Clearwater City, the Desert of Death. The red Desert of Death stood out in the wind and sand. The rocks were severely weathered and looked like they would shatter at the slightest touch. However, everyone knew how hard the rocks of the Desert of Death were. Even an out-of-body cultivator might not be able to leave a mark on them. Sikong Chuan and Tian Buwei hadn't arrived yet, but the area within 100 miles was already packed with cultivators. They were all over the desert. There were no less than 200,000 people. These 200,000 people were cultivators from all over the three continents. They wanted to see the demeanor of the Dark Horse, Sikong Chiwen, and the young master of Stargate, Tian Buwei. Because there were too many people, even if the cultivators were in the air, they wouldn't be able to see the entire scene of the battle. Hence, the Array Masters played a crucial role here. Master Lu and Sitian Tian led a few disciples of the Array faction to use the Mirage Array to forcibly move the entire scene of the Desert of Death into different areas of the desert. Master Lu and the others created close to 20 Mirage Array formations in the boundless desert. Each formation could be seen by about 10,000 people. Surrounding the formations, they could watch the battle in the Desert of Death in the distance. Because they were all in the desert, even if they weren't in the Desert of Death, they could still know what was happening in the Desert of Death. This formation was extremely profound. By using light rays and formation patterns to project the effects of an area, one could completely pass off the false as the real thing. The Mirage formation was also an illusion formation that every culmination formation master had to learn. If it could be modified reasonably, it could even trap a person who was trapped in the illusion formation forever in the Kuan-Zi formation. The Desert of Death could not accommodate so many people, so the self-cultivators who could watch the competition near the real Desert of Death were at least in the out-of-body stage. There were also many in the function stage, and there were even a few in the form synthesis stage. This place had become a gathering place for masters. As for those with weaker cultivations, they couldn't squeeze into the area of the Desert of Death, so they could only watch from the Mirage formation created by Master Lu. Of course, it wasn't free to watch. If one wanted to see the scene created by the Mirage formation, they would need to pay 100 spirit stones. Then, A formation pattern would be injected into the person's eyes, and they would be able to see the scene of the mirage formation. Master Lu didn't come to Clearwater City just to help the evil sect set up the formation. They saw this business opportunity and were willing to pay a reasonable fee. This kind of opportunity was very rare, and the speed of money was much faster than helping others create the formation. 100 spirit stones wasn't expensive, and it was quite worth it to be able to see the battle between two extreme immortals. Other than the 10,000 or so people who were able to watch the competition in the real Desert of Death, there were nearly 180,000 people who chose to buy the Mirage Formation from Master Lu to watch the formation pattern. This also meant that Master Lu would earn at least 18 million spirit stones from his business. For the Array faction, this was not a small amount. It was reasonable to say that Master Lu should be very happy, but at this moment, Master Lu appeared to be very unhappy. The jingling sound of spirit stones in his pocket could not arouse his interest, because he had lost the sect master who caused him so much worry. Mu Yu, my little ancestor, where are you? Master Lu looked around anxiously, but unfortunately, he couldn't find any trace of Mu Yu. A few days ago, Mu Yu had asked Master Lu and Sitian Tian to set up a few huge fixed formations in the desert, specifically to deal with Shadow Killer Qingming. Yesterday, Master Lu went to the place where the fixed formations were set up to check, but the formations in the desert had disappeared. Mu Yu used the chaotic yin and yang to move the entire fixed formations away, leaving no traces. The place where he fought with Shadow Killer Qingming was different from the place where Master Lu set up the formations. The desert was so big, and Master Lu didn't know where to look. Is there still no news of Mu Yu? Sitian Tian came over and asked. Master Lu shook his head. The only thing the two of them could be sure of was that Mu Yu was still alive, but they didn't know where he was. Their sect master hadn't fully grown yet, and now he was going to fight Shadow Killer Qingming, who was ranked 43rd among the extreme immortals. The more Master Lu thought about it, the more regretful he became. Why did he agree to Mu Yu's plan? Mu Tianhe and Mu Zhixing were next to Master Lu, and they looked very anxious. Mu Yu had been missing for several days. If it weren't for the fact that Master Lu and Sitian Tian were sure that Mu Yu was still alive, they wouldn't have been able to hold back. Except for Mu Tianhe and Mu Zhixing, who had the ability to protect themselves, the rest of the Mu family didn't come to the desert because they were worried about accidents, so they all stayed in the Mu Mansion. Sitian Tian helped them set up a small mirage formation in the Mu Mansion so that they could see the situation here, but whether it was the scale or the effect, it was obviously not as real as in the desert. Where's young friend Kai Lai? Master Lu asked. He said he wanted to find his brother Xingyao to find out what the 8 gates are going to do. Mu Zhixing said. Forget it. Let's go to the Desert of Death first. Xikong Chuan and Tian Bue were about to reach the Death Desert. Don't get lost. Just follow us, Master Lu said to Mu Tianhe and Mu Zhixing. Thank you for your trouble. Master Lu and Master Situ, Mu Tianhe said. He and Mu Zhixing had come mainly to wait for Mu Yu, but in order not to attract attention, Master Lu had set up an illusion formation on their faces to hide their true faces. Master Lu and Situ Yantian needed to cast a formation near the Desert of Death and transmit the situation of the battle to the Mirage Formation in other places. With their strength as Severed Spirit Formation Masters, they had more than enough power to occupy a place in the Desert of Death. They quickly led Mu Tianhe and Mu Zhixing to the Desert of Death. The Desert of Death. The sand around the Desert of Death was still flowing, as if there was an unknown force pulling the sand. It was said that this sand had already swallowed many people, and sometimes one could even see eerie white bones floating in the sand. The self-cultivators who had the strength to watch from the Death Desert were ranked according to their cultivation level. The innermost layer was filled with Severed Soul Stage cultivators. There weren't many Severed Soul Stage cultivators, only about 100 of them. Most of the Severed Soul Stage cultivators were old and had exceeded the age limit of the Supreme Immortal Leaderboard. They were only here to broaden their horizons. Everyone was here for Sikong Chiwen because many people wanted to know how strong the legendary golden phoenix that flew out of the grass nest was. Sikong Chiwen was famous in the self-cultivator world, but very few people had seen him fight, and no one knew how he defeated his opponents. Everyone's knowledge of his achievements came from the information on the supreme immortal tablet. This was the first time he truly fought in front of everyone, so everyone was looking forward to seeing what Sikong Chiwen's moves were. Many people were very interested in how Sikong Chiwen turned from a rookie during the Jindan period into a dark horse in just 1 year. If they could dig out his secrets, it would be very important for themselves and their sect. Everyone was more familiar with Tianbu Wait. This young master of Stargate, no matter how hard he tried to hide it, there were still people who saw him fight. His supreme immortal information was not hard to buy, and some rich people already knew about Tianbu Wait. As for Mu Yu, who was once again labeled as someone who lost without a fight, no one had any hope for him. Even if he appeared here today, it would not help because his cultivation was only at the 9th sky of out-of-body realm. In many people's opinion, Mu Yu, who was at the 9th sky of out-of-body realm, was no match for Sikong Chiwen and Tianbu Wai, who were at the 6th sky of out-of-body realm. Did you know? I heard that the servants of the Mu clan leaked the news that Mu Yu didn't abandon the Mu clan and left Clearwater City. Instead, he went alone to find Shadow Killer Qingming. Didn't someone ask Shadow Killer Qingming to kill Mu Yu? Then wouldn't he be walking into a tiger's den if he went alone? Who knows? Anyway, the Mu clan is panicking now, and there's still no news of Mu Yu. He probably died in the hands of Shadow Killer Qingming. What a pity. Actually, I have high hopes for Mu Yu. In terms of potential, Mu Yu should be higher than Sikong Chiwen. After all, he's the youngest. As long as he's given time, I can guarantee that he'll definitely trample Sikong Chiwen under his feet. What's the use of your guarantee? If he really went to find Shadow Killer Qingming with his current cultivation level, he's just digging his own grave. He's too arrogant. Yeah, many self-cultivators were discussing Mu Yu. Although the 3 main characters of the Desert of Death hadn't appeared yet, everyone had already eliminated Mu Yu from the competition. Today's competition had completely become Sikong Chiwen and Tianbu Wei's battlefield. Suddenly, a sharp whistling sound rang out in the scorching hot air. Then, a figure approached from afar, taking a step forward. Sikong Chiwen's figure slowly appeared in front of everyone. His white robes fluttered in the wind, and his aura was extremely ostentatious. He was like a sharp sword, making it hard for anyone to get close to him. Sikong Chiwen stood on the highest peak of the Desert of Death. He didn't make any unnecessary movements, nor did he speak. The countless gazes around him didn't affect him at all. He closed his eyes and rested. After about a quarter of an hour, Tianbu Wei also landed on the rock opposite Sikong Chiwen with a gentle smile. In contrast to Sikong Chiwen, Tianbu Wei's aura was restrained and deep. He was like a warm jade that made people feel like they were bathing in the spring breeze. Chapter 539. On the 6th day of the 6th month, there were still 4 hours before noon. The scorching sun shone on the Death Desert, making everyone's heart burn. Because the 2 heavens chosen had arrived, it meant that an unprecedented battle was about to begin. Regardless of who won or lost today, the battle between these 2 people would definitely be praised endlessly by everyone. Sikong Chiwen and Tianbu Wei looked at each other. Neither of them was in a hurry to make a move, nor did they say anything. The 2 of them stood like this for a long time. The scorching sun had already made the desert steamy. Many people were even getting impatient. Why haven't they started yet? Yeah, it's been almost 2 hours since they arrived. They didn't understand what the 2 were waiting for. The battle should have started 2 hours ago, but no one expected the 2 to show no signs of making a move. Sikong Chiwen opened his eyes and looked at Tianbu Wei. Are you in a hurry? Tianbu Wei smiled gently. The person I want to kill hasn't arrived yet. I'm not in a hurry. The true God disciple will die at my hands, not yours. Sikong Chiwen said slowly. Not necessarily. Tianbu Wei shook his head. Everyone was in an uproar. The two of them hadn't made a move yet because they were waiting for the true god's disciple, Mu Yu, to appear. Moreover, both of them wanted to kill Mu Yu. Thinking about it, it seemed to make sense. If the true god's disciple died at the hands of either of them, their reputation would be even more prominent. Jian Ying and Chun Feng were true gods of the third layer of the continent. Their achievements and cultivation were second to none. His disciple was also known as the person most capable of creating miracles. If someone could kill the true god's disciple, then that person would naturally step on the corpse of the true god's disciple and become the object of praise in the cultivation world. Bastard, you're asking for a beating. Mu Yu is much stronger than you. Master Lu clenched his fists in anger. Situ Yan Tian also looked at Sikong Chiwen and Tian Busho angrily. He had never liked Mu Yu, but that was also because he suspected Mu Yu's identity. Now that Mu Yu had become their sect master, he would not allow Mu Yu to be looked down upon like this. The dignified sect leader of the Formation Glyph sect was actually humiliated in such a manner. How infuriating! In everyone's eyes, Mu Yu, who had the lowest cultivation, had become the target that everyone could bully. This was a rather interesting matter. However, none of the self-cultivators present thought that Sikong Chuan and Tian Buli were bluffing, because Mu Yu's cultivation was indeed inferior to theirs before he grew up. You're going too far. Mu Tianhe forcefully suppressed his anger. His grandson was being used as a stepping stone to become famous, but he couldn't do anything about it. This was a very sullen thing. Mu Yu, where the hell are you? Mu Zixing's face was full of anxiety. At this moment, he was also very conflicted. He didn't want his son to be looked down upon, but he also didn't want his son to appear here because he knew that his son didn't have the ability to fight against the two people in front of him. Sikong Chuan and Tian Buli were still looking at each other, and once again fell into silence. In the desert, no matter if they were present or not, they were already impatient. Some people even began to curse. After all, everyone had braved the scorching heat to watch the battle between Sikong Chuan and Tian Buli, not to accompany the two of them and wait for the arrival of another person. Both of you want to kill the true god's disciple to prove yourselves, so why don't you take the true god's disciple as the trophy of victory? Why don't the two of you fight it out, and the winner can fight with Mu Yu and kill the true god's disciple? Isn't that better? Someone couldn't help but shout loudly. His words were immediately echoed by many onlookers. Many of the onlookers nodded in agreement. Taking the true god's disciple's life as the trophy of this battle was blatantly not putting Mu Yu, Sikong Chuan, and Tian Buli on the same level. What do you think? Tian Buli asked gently. It couldn't be better, Sikong Chuan said calmly. The auras of the sixth heavenly layer doppelgangers started to become restless around the desert of death. One of them was the young master of the Heavenly Star sect, and the other was a dark horse on the supreme immortal ranking. Both of them were outstanding figures of the younger generation. No matter who won this battle, it would be a feast for the eyes. The true god's disciple's life is mine. Tian Buli's gentle eyes suddenly revealed a trace of ferocious killing intent. A long spear had already appeared in his hand. Under the illumination of the sun, the heavenly astral spear flickered with a clear and cold light. It was known as the world's most indestructible spear, invincible in every battle. Once the spear appeared, all the sharp weapons in the world seemed to be overshadowed in front of it. You're wrong. The true god's disciple's life belongs to me. Sikong Chiwen sneered. A yellow flying sword streaked across his hand. The flying sword didn't shine at all. It was like an ordinary blunt sword. However, it gave people a heavy feeling. It was as if it weighed thousands of pounds. It pressed heavily on everyone's heart. Their auras continued to rise, competing with each other. They soared into the sky like rainbows piercing through the sun. At a certain point in time, their auras suddenly accumulated to the limit. Then, the two figures disappeared for where they were. With a terrifying explosion, they charged towards each other. However, at this moment, a green sword suddenly appeared between the two of them. The green sword was like a clear spring. It shone with a biting cold light. It appeared so suddenly that Sikong Chiwen and Tian Bewley were caught off guard. The surging sword aura suddenly swept out like a huge wave. It directly destroyed the entire Death Desert into rubble and fell down. Sikong Chiwen and Tian Bewley's expressions changed. They quickly retreated. After retreating about 30 meters, they slowly stabilized their bodies. They coldly looked at the person wrapped in the biting cold sword aura. "You want to take my life so much? Are you too worthy?" A figure slowly appeared between the two people. His aura was like the sun in the sky. He was like a god descending to the mortal world. Everyone couldn't help but tremble. The true god's disciple, Mu Yu. How is this possible? The true god's disciple is actually. This aura is not weaker than Sikong Chiwen and Tian Bewley's. Isn't Mu Yu only in the out-of-body stage? When did he enter the Funshin stage? Heavens! Mu Yu actually repelled Sikong Chiwen and Tian Bewley at the same time. Isn't this too unbelievable? Mu Yu's appearance set off a huge wave in the eyes of the 200,000 self-cultivators. They all thought that Mu Yu, who had the weakest cultivation, was a coward and didn't dare to show up. Those who knew that Mu Yu went to find Shadow Killer Ming Ming thought that Mu Yu was doomed. However, no one expected that Mu Yu had already stepped into the Funshin stage. Looking at his terrifying aura, it was not weaker than Sikong Chiwen and Tian Bewley's. It was a slap in the face to all those who had mocked and looked down on him. They wanted to take him as the spoils of war for Sikong Chiwen and Tian Bewley, but he had already repelled both of them at the same time. Only now did they realize how ridiculous their original idea was. "It's Mu Yu. That's great." Lu Xianshi and Situ Yangtian's nervous hearts immediately relaxed. Mu Yu's appearance at this time undoubtedly allowed them to breathe a sigh of relief. As the leader of the Formation Glyph sect, Mu Yu couldn't have any mishaps. "I knew Mu Yu would be fine." Mu Tianhe and Mu Zhixing also looked excitedly at the strange, yet familiar figure in the middle of the field. They couldn't help but feel excited. Mu Yu quietly floated in the air and coldly glanced around. Then his eyes fell on Tian Bewley. Anger and resentment flashed through Mu Yu's eyes. The enemy who killed Deadwood Daddy was right in front of him, but Mu Yu didn't have any impulse. He knew that today, the two of them would definitely settle things. "You've been hiding from me for half a year. Why don't you continue hiding? Is it because the anniversary of Deadwood Sr.'s death hasn't arrived yet?" Tian Bewley looked at Mu Yu gently. Mu Yu stared at Tian Bewley and suddenly revealed a mocking smile. "Tian Bewley, you want to kill me in front of others, but on the other hand, you're secretly plotting against me. Are you so unconfident in yourself that you still need to rely on Shadow Killer Qingming to kill me?" Tian Bewley stopped smiling and frowned. "Shadow Killer Qingming? How come you don't even know about Shadow Killer Qingming? It seems that your bullshit leader of Stargate doesn't even trust your son. He even invited Shadow Killer Qingming, who is ranked 43rd in the Extreme Immortal ranking, to kill me. How laughable. I thought that your pathetic leader of Stargate would have a little more confidence in you." Mu Yu mocked. He had always regarded Tian Bewley as a real opponent. But ever since he found out that Tian Bewley's achievements today were all because Tian Yuehen asked Shadow Killer Qingming to secretly help him, he suddenly looked down on Tian Bewley. What? Shadow Killer Qingming was actually invited by Stargate's leader, Tian Yuehen, to assassinate Mu Yu? Stargate would actually do such a thing. This news instantly exploded in everyone's eyes. Everyone looked at each other, half believing and half doubting this news. If this was true, then Tian Bewley was really shameless to the extreme. On one hand, he claimed that he wanted to kill Mu Yu with his own hands. On the other hand, he actually invited Shadow Killer Qingming, who was ranked 43rd in the Extreme Immortal ranking, to kill Mu Yu. In everyone's eyes, this was a joke. However, another doubt surfaced in everyone's mind. If Shadow Killer Qingming was going to assassinate Mu Yu, then how did Mu Yu appear here, safe and sound? I don't like people insulting my father. Tian Bewley's eyes flashed with boundless killing intent. So, just stating the truth is insulting your father? You must be very proud of living in your father's lies every day, right? Mu Yu sneered. Insulting my father. You are courting death. Tian Bewley no longer had that hypocritical smile on his face. I'm sorry for stepping on your tail. Mu Yu's every word was full of hatred. In the past few months after Deadwood Daddy's death, Mu Yu had been thinking about killing Tian Bewley all the time. However, when Tian Bewley appeared in front of him, he found that he was surprisingly calm, because he knew that Tian Bewley would definitely die in his hands. Mu Yu stretched out his right hand and looked at his wrist indifferently. The 43 Extreme Immortal mark was clearly displayed in front of everyone's eyes. 43. This Extreme Immortal mark was so dazzling in everyone's eyes. It was like a bolt of lightning striking everyone's eyes, causing everyone to be stunned for a moment. Unfortunately, Tian Bewley, if you want to kill me, Shadow Killer Qingming alone is far from enough. Mu Yu said slowly. Shadow Killer Qingming, the 43rd Extreme Immortal, was one of the most terrifying assassins in the Silhouette being. He had never failed any of the missions he took on, and so far, no one who had been targeted by him had survived. However, Mu Yu had snatched Shadow Killer Qingming's Extreme Immortal mark, which meant that Shadow Killer Qingming had already been defeated by Mu Yu, and he had even been killed by Mu Yu. Silence. Everyone was silent. Many people couldn't help but swallow a mouthful of saliva. Mu Yu was only at the 9th celestial layer of out-of-body realm at the beginning. How could he kill Shadow Killer Qingming? Shadow Killer Qingming was an extreme immortal who ranked higher than Sikong Chuan and Tian Bewley, but he was still defeated by Mu Yu. Didn't that mean that Mu Yu could easily deal with either Sikong Chuan or Tian Bewley? Chapter 540. Mu Yu's extreme immortal ranking had risen to 43. That was Shadow Killer Qingming's ranking. Everyone knew what the Shadow Killer of the Silhouette being meant. They came and went like ghosts, and their methods of killing were clean and efficient. Their missions were almost guaranteed to succeed, and it was rare to hear of them failing. However, no one expected that Mu Yu, who was looked down upon the most at the beginning, would directly kill Shadow Killer Qingming. He even took over their ranking. And according to Mu Yu, Shadow Killer Qingming seemed to be sent by Tian Bushi's father, Tian Yuan. This was very ironic. Tian Bushi came to Clearwater City to fight with Sikong Chuan. Later, Mu Yu also appeared in Clearwater City and threatened to kill Tian Bushi. Tian Bushi had always wanted to kill Mu Yu. Whether it was Tian Bu Waiting's cultivation or extreme immortal ranking, he was far superior to Mu Yu. Everyone was optimistic about Tian Bu Waiting. They thought that this battle would be a fair contest. But who would have thought that the sect leader of the Sky Star sect would send Qingming to assassinate Mu Yu? This was clearly Stargate's leader's distrust of his son. I don't need the help of outsiders to kill you. Tian Bushi's gentle expression had long disappeared and was replaced by a cold, murderous intent. Mu Yu's words made him feel an unspeakable shame. Tian Bushi knew that Shadow Killer Qingming wanted to assassinate Mu Yu. When his father, Tian Yuan, sent Shadow Killer Qingming, he was extremely opposed because he knew that Mu Yu would definitely come to him for revenge. And what he wanted to do was to kill the true God's disciple in front of everyone in the cultivation world. Only in this way would his reputation of not waiting for the heavens be even more feared. At that time, Tian Yuan had already promised Tian Bushi that he would kill the true God's disciple. However, in secret, Tian Yuan did not want to take this risk. The true God disciple was known to be the person who could create miracles the most. He was worried that his son would fail, so he asked Shadow Killer Qingming to come and kill Mu Yu. It was supposed to be a foolproof plan, but who would have thought that the person who created the most miracles lived up to his reputation? Mu Yu killed the Shadow Killer, Qingming, who was feared by everyone. Everyone understood once again that there was a price to pay for underestimating a true God's disciple. Mu Yu's ranking on the Supreme Immortal Leaderboard was higher than Sikong Chuan and Tian Bushi. This battle was no longer just between the two of them. Don't ask for help from outsiders? That was even better than singing. Then, in order to deal with Sikong Chuan, didn't the people of the Eight Gates help you? Don't you feel disgusted saying that? Mu Yu said coldly. The veins on Tian Bushi's forehead bulged. Muyu looked at Tian Bushi, who no longer had his usual calm expression. He knew that his killing of Shadow Killer Qing Ming had affected Tian Bushi's state of mind. He smiled and said, "What's wrong? Shadow Killer Qing Ming was defeated by me. Did that fake smile of yours disappear?" Tian Bushi usually gave people the impression that he was a gentle and refined young man. However, at this moment, his face no longer had that fake expression of the past. Instead, it became somewhat ferocious. Tian Bushi narrowed his eyes and looked at Muyu. "Do you think you can defeat me just because you defeated Shadow Killer Qing Ming? Let me tell you, you will die by my hands today. I will step on your corpse and let the cultivation world know who the true genius is." Sikong Chiwen also looked at Muyu. From Muyu's aura, it was clear that he had just stepped into the spirit-severing stage. However, Muyu was like a volcano waiting to erupt. It was as if there was a lion sleeping in his heart. This instead stimulated his competitive spirit. "Tian Bushi, I think you should just wait on the side. If a true God's disciple dies, it will be by my hands. I will step on him to rise." Sikong Chiwen said without hesitation. Muyu now had the strength of the spirit-severing stage. He was not on the same level as Sikong Chiwen and Tian Bushi. No matter who killed a true God's disciple, they would be talked about enthusiastically in the cultivation world. Jian Ying and Chun Feng represented the true gods of the three continents. If they could kill a true God's disciple, it would definitely be a praiseworthy thing. Everyone wanted to have this honor. This was also the reason why Sikong Chiwen specially challenged Muyu and Tian Bushi in front of so many people today. No matter who won today's battle, the entire cultivation world would remember him. "Looks like we have a problem. That is, who should kill a true God's disciple? I can't let you kill him first, can I?" Tian Bushi sneered. He still did not put Muyu in his eyes. Just like what Shadow Kill Qing Ming said, Tian Bushi was not as simple as being ranked 50th. He was much stronger than Shadow Kill Qing Ming. Even if Muyu killed Shadow Kill Qing Ming, Tian Bushi was not afraid at all. "Problem? I don't think it's difficult. Both of you want to kill me. Why don't both of you come me together?" Muyu said slowly. His voice wasn't loud, but it stunned everyone. Both of them together? How dare this Muyu say such big words? Even if he defeated Shadow Kill Qing Ming, the combined strength of Sikong Chiwen and Tian Bushi is definitely not weaker than Shadow Kill Qing Ming. How can he be so confident? 1 against 2? Isn't that shameless? Many people were talking about it. Muyu breaking through to the spirit-severing stage surprised many people, and killing Shadow Kill Qing Ming was even more unbelievable. However, everyone present was an expert. They all understood that two people at the spirit-severing stage together were not as simple as 1 + 1. Shadow Kill Qing Ming might be powerful, but he definitely did not dare to say that he could fight against Sikong Chiwen and Tian Bushi at the same time. After all, these two people were top geniuses. Was Muyu really going to fight against two people at the same time? Master Lu and Situ Yang Tian looked at each other and saw a trace of worry in each other's eyes. Although Muyu was the sect master of their formation glyph sect, the current Muyu had not really grown up and had just broken through to the spirit-severing stage. They were not worried about 1-on-1, but 1 against 2 was a bit overconfident. Mu Tianhe and Mu Zhixing were even more nervous. They couldn't wait to stop this competition, but in front of so many people, if they did anything, there would be countless people who would take them down. 1 against 2, are you worthy? Tian Bushi said disdainfully. "I don't know if I'm worthy or not, but I'm sure you'll die." Muyu's fighting spirit was soaring. The enemy who killed Deadwood Daddy was right in front of him. How could he let him go? These two people want to step on his corpse to prove themselves. How could he let these two people laugh at him unscrupulously? Arrogant. Tian Bushi snorted coldly. Muyu didn't continue to talk nonsense. A green 8 trigrams formation pattern appeared under his feet. His whole body just happened to be in the southwest direction of the 8 trigrams formation. The formation pattern in his hand surged, and a majestic spiritual power suddenly hit the 8 trigrams formation. The shadow swords flashed out from different positions of the 8 trigrams formation. Each shadow sword flashed with a cold light. Then, all the shadow swords soared into the sky. The tip of the sword touched the tail of the 8 trigrams formation. A dragon-shaped sword shadow rushed up from the 8 trigrams formation. Wind Sunluo, dragon roaring sky. The dragon vine roared and shot out from Mu Yu's hand, instantly swallowing up the violent sword intent. The dragon vine's entire body was like a sharp sword, nimbly circling above Mu Yu's head. Little handsome dragon vine, you guys be careful. Mu Yu's gaze fell on Tian Bushi. Got it. Hurry up and kill Tian Bushi. Sikong Chiwen and I will take care of Big Earthworm. Little Shuai also jumped into the 8 trigrams array. Blue light sputtered from his tiny body. He placed one of his tiny hands on his waist while the other pointed at the sky. All the white fur on his body stood on end. A blue sword with his tiny paw as the hilt soared into the sky. Mu Yu also held a shadow sword in his hand. His sword intent was awe-inspiring. Murderous intent filled the air and pointed to Tian Bushi. Everyone looked at Mu Yu in shock. Whether it was the formation pattern under his feet, the huge dragon vine, or the cute little handsome, they all emitted an aura that shook people's hearts in the rolling heat wave. Everyone couldn't help but take a few steps back. No wonder Mu Yu has the confidence to fight 1 against 2. Array Masters really do have this ability. But Sikong Chiwen and Tian Bushi definitely know how to deal with Array Masters. Everyone knew the strengths and weaknesses of Array Masters. Their explosive power was just too high. Many people didn't dare to casually fight with Array Masters. Even if Array Masters had the weakness of not being able to continue the fight, many people would be defeated before the Array Masters formation dissipated. But he can command 2 demonic beasts. This is obviously the ability of the earthly imperial sect. Everyone was puzzled. Mu Yu relied on 2 powerful demonic beasts to participate in the battle, but no one said anything. This was because every disciple of the earthly imperial sect would tame powerful demonic beasts for battle. The strength of the earthly imperial sect was linked to the demonic beasts. Not to mention others, Xing Gao, who was ranked 63rd on the Supreme Immortal ranking, had a godly eagle by his side. Many people were defeated by his godly eagle. This Mu Yu couldn't be related to the earthly imperial sect, right? No wonder Mu Yu dared to fight 2 Supreme Immortals at the same time. Powerful demonic beasts, Array Master, and true God's disciple. These 3 identities gave him the confidence to do so. The wind heart linking formation was guarded by Little Handsome. Mu Yu and Dragon Vine had already charged toward Tian Bushi and Sikong Chiwen respectively. Wind Dragon, Vine howling sky. Dragon Vine sword Chi carved a deep hole in the sand dunes along the way. He opened his mouth and spat out a violent dragon breath that turned into terrifying swords that filled the sky and fell towards Sikong Chiwen. Dragon Vine was only in the out-of-body stage. However, when he used the wind fall dragon howling sky, he relied on Mu Yu's sword Chi. He was just a carrier. Therefore, when Mu Yu broke through to the spirit severing stage, Dragon Vine's combat strength was also at the spirit severing stage. Little Handsome's mysterious thunderfall. Little Handsome shouted, not to be outdone. The blue lightning sword in his hand slashed towards Sikong Chiwen. The violent blue sword Chi flashed in the air. Countless lightning bolts suddenly fell from the sky and blasted towards Sikong Chiwen. Sikong Chiwen's expression turned serious. Dragon Vine and Little Handsome's attacks were not to be underestimated. The yellow sword Chi in his hand swirled and swept up all the yellow sand around him to meet Little Handsome and Dragon Vine. Boom! The sand exploded, the sword light flickered, and the sword Chi shot in all directions. The spirit Chi in the surroundings surged restlessly and exploded with Sikong Chiwen as the center, spreading in all directions. Everyone had already retreated a few hundred meters, afraid that they would be affected by this violent aura. This level of explosive power was too terrifying. All the out-of-body stage cultivators present felt a chill. This dragon is the dragon vine that Muyu rode on floating immortal island, right? How can it have such terrifying, explosive power? Everyone swallowed their saliva. Those spirit-severing stage cultivators all asked themselves if they were attacked by Dragon Vine and Little Handsome, it would be difficult for them to win. However, when they stood firm and wanted to look for Muyu, they found that whether it was Muyu or Tian Buchi, they were actually covered by a vast plain, an oasis in the desert. What a powerful array! Everyone was shocked by the plain, but they could not see the shadows of Muyu and Tian Buchi at all. Master Lu and Situ Yangtian's eyes flashed with array patterns. They had been staring at the vibrant plain in the distance. Only the two of them, Xiantian array masters, could see the battle between Muyu and Tian Buchi at this moment. Muyu had already used the array to envelop Tian Buchi. In the powerful array, Muyu had an absolute advantage. Chapter 541. On the 6th day of the 6th month, there were still 2 hours before noon. Tian Bue surveyed his surroundings. He felt as if he had left the desert of death, or even the entire desert, and arrived on an open plain. The surrounding flowers and plants were full of vitality, and bees and butterflies danced. It was completely different from the desolate desert. Muyu was on a tree not far away, staring at Tian Bue. Faint formation patterns rippled around him, faintly discernible. From time to time, ripples would spread out and merge into the void. I look down on formation masters and talisman masters the most in my life because I feel that they are flashy but useless. In my opinion, you are nothing more than that. Tian Bue tapped his foot lightly and charged towards Muyu. The heavenly astral spear in his hand was incomparably sharp. It suddenly disappeared from Tian Bue's hand, and when it reappeared, it was only an inch away from Muyu's throat. What fast speed! Muyu frowned slightly. He had seen the heavenly astral spear once, when he was in the second heaven. At that time, it was wielded by Tian Yun. Tian Yun, who was in the nascent soul stage, could not unleash the true power of the heavenly astral spear, but it had still caused a lot of trouble for Muyu. Now that it was in Tian Bue's hands, it was a completely different concept. The power that Tian Bue could unleash was more than 10,000 times that of that lecherous Tian Yun. The terrifying spear shadows exploded in the air, and in an instant, countless spear shadows appeared. The spear shadows seemed to gather from all directions, enveloping Muyu. The heavenly astral spear's attack speed was very fast, but Muyu's reaction was not slow either. The formation patterns around his body flashed, and the heavenly constellation formation had already teleported him out. In the blink of an eye, he was behind Tian Bue. The formation patterns in his hand rippled, and the shadow clone sword was already drawn from the void. The dense and sharp sword chi was like a torrential river, gushing out from the tip of the sword and pouring down on Tian Bue. A shield suddenly appeared behind Tian Bue, and in an instant, it blocked all of Muyu's sword chi. Tian Bue had already stepped into the void and disappeared. Void walking was a method of walking that spirit-severing cultivators could achieve, but this method of walking consumed a lot of spiritual power. In fact, it was only because spirit-severing cultivators were extremely fast that they could tear space apart. However, this movement technique was completely different from Muyu's Big Dipper constellation formation. This was because the void walk was about shrinking the ground. The entire person's aura would leave a mark in the air. On the other hand, Muyu's Big Dipper constellation formation directly disappeared from one place and appeared in another place. It would not leave any traces along the way. Muyu coldly snorted. While the two were fighting, they had already locked onto each other's aura. Tian Bai broke through the void. As soon as he appeared, Muyu's sword chi once again slashed towards Tian Bai's head. Bang! Without exception, the heavenly star shield appeared at the perfect time in Tian Bushi's hands, protecting him in the blink of an eye. Muyu kicked the heavenly star shield. A powerful spiritual power burst out from his foot, and transmitted to the Heavenly Star Shield. However, the Heavenly Star Shield was a very special magic weapon. When Mu Yu's spiritual power hit the Heavenly Star Shield, it was like a stone sinking into the sea. It did not have any effect on Tianbai at all. Mu Yu borrowed the force of the collision and flipped backwards, disappearing once again. The place where he had been just now was now filled with countless Heavenly Star spear shadows. Agile swallow returns to nest. Countless black and white swallows flapped their wings and flew rapidly through the air. They covered the sky and covered the earth as they flew towards Tianbai. With the current spirit severing stage, Mu Yu could use agile swallow returns to nest to deal with Tianbai, who was also in the spirit severing stage. The speed of the swallows he transformed into had reached a terrifying level. As long as Tianbai was hit by his formation, Mu Yu would be able to see through Tianbai's weak point. Tianbai had the powerful Heavenly Star Shield. Its defense was unparalleled. It would be difficult for Mu Yu to break through the Heavenly Star Shield. However, the Heavenly Star Shield on Tianbai's body split into countless shadows and instantly enveloped him. Countless swallows pounced on the Heavenly Star Shield and turned into specks of starlight. The Heavenly Star Spear in Tianbai's hand carried a powerful spiritual power and destroyed all the swallows' formation runes. I have a way to deal with formations. After all, the entire talisman sect was almost in my pocket, Tianbai said coldly. When the talisman sect wanted to annex the Erase sect, the talisman sect relied on the people from Stargate. Needless to say, Tianbai was also one of the masterminds behind it. However, the Erase sect directly eliminated all the invaders, causing their plan to fail at Stargate. Ding! The Shadow Sword and Heavenly Star Spear collided. Surging spiritual power swept out with the two of them as the center. In an instant, the vast plains were shattered into fragments of formations. The two figures reappeared in front of everyone. Mu Yu's illusion array had been broken by Tianbai. The biting cold sword chi and the invincible spear shadows intertwined. The two figures flashed in the air above the desert of death, turning into numerous afterimages. Countless sparks of formation runes surged, twisting the entire desert of death into flat ground. Give up. My Heavenly Star Shield is indestructible. You will never be able to break my Heavenly Star Shield. Tianbai's cultivation was much higher than Mu Yu's. In addition, he had the Heavenly Star Spear and Heavenly Star Shield, which were two peerless treasures. He used them to perfection. Mu Yu couldn't take advantage of him, even if he wanted to. Mu Yu had just broken through to the spirit severing stage, but his strength couldn't be estimated according to normal standards. He had the yin and yang primal chaos and could use countless formations to deal with enemies. However, if the formations couldn't be used on Tianbai, then it was basically useless. The yin and yang primal chaos could only be used with the formation hall and formation rune stone to display its powerful strength. Unfortunately, the formation hall couldn't be carried around. Otherwise, Mu Yu would have used the soul formation to deal with Tianbai. Indestructible? I don't think so. Mu Yu took a deep breath. He remembered the formation technique used by Deadwood Daddy. With his cultivation during the Jindan period, he almost killed Tianbai, who was at the spirit severing stage. At that time, Deadwood Daddy integrated the power of the exploding core into the formation, allowing the rank 7 exploding core to fully display the attack of the unification stage. The kind of divine power still reverberated in Mu Yu's mind. Deadwood Daddy had always hoped to show off in front of Mu Yu. He wanted to let Mu Yu understand the true strength of his Deadwood Daddy. However, the sneak attack of the Triple Palace made Deadwood Daddy unable to fulfill this wish before he died. This was his wish to show off in front of Mu Yu. Now that Mu Yu had learned a lot about Xian formations, he finally understood how strong Deadwood Daddy was. This kind of extraordinary formation technique was actually impossible to use with the cultivation during the Jindan period. At that time, Deadwood Daddy used his life force as the foundation of the formation. In order to surprise Mu Yu, Deadwood Daddy squandered his remaining life force. Dad, You didn't kill Tion by last time. You must have endless regrets in your heart. Let me help you make up for this regret. 5 rank 7 exploding cores appeared in Muyu's hand. A rank 7 exploding core meant that the full power of the unification stage's attack was quite terrifying. This kind of formation technique would burn one's life force, but Muyu didn't care so much. Deadwood Daddy's formation technique didn't kill Tion Bai, so he would use the same formation technique to fulfill Deadwood Daddy's wish. An 8 trigrams formation was formed under Muyu's feet and slowly rotated. A powerful aura erupted with Muyu as the center. With his current cultivation, the formation technique he displayed was many times stronger than Deadwood Daddy's in the past. The formation pattern slowly wandered in Muyu's hand and wrapped around the 5 rank 7 exploding cores. Under the cover of the formation pattern, the exploding cores gradually turned into pure medicinal power and were wrapped by the formation pattern. The rank 7 exploding cores emitted a dazzling golden light, like a bright star, illuminating the entire desert. Then 5 formation pattern vortexes filled with terrifying aura revolved in front of Muyu. A huge pressure swept out from the 5 formation pattern vortexes, causing everyone's heart to tremble. This is the attack of the unification stage. Everyone was shocked. They didn't understand why Muyu, who had just stepped into the spirit severing stage, could use the formation technique of the unification stage at once. Have you tried to fuse the exploding cores into the formation technique? Master Lu turned to Situ Yang Tian. His face was a little uncertain. Any formation technique that could exceed one's cultivation level must have a huge price to pay. I haven't tried it. This kind of formation technique is too advanced. If one doesn't control the medicinal properties of the exploding cores well, it's easy to hurt oneself. I'm afraid that only alchemists can fully master the exploding cores. Situ Yang Tian pondered for a long time and said seriously. Master Lu nodded slightly. I'm afraid only Muyu is both an alchemist and a formation master. Apart from Lu Xianshi and Situ Yang Tian, no one else understood what was going on. They all looked at Muyu, who was controlling the 5 vortexes, in surprise and bewilderment. That terrifying aura made everyone smell a trace of danger. Tian Bue frowned slightly. He naturally recognized this formation technique. When he wanted to capture Deadwood Evergreen in the woods, he had seen this kind of terrifying pressure. But at that time, he wasn't hit by Deadwood Evergreen. He didn't even know that someone had interfered with Deadwood Evergreen and caused him to escape with his life. He just thought that Deadwood Evergreen was overestimating himself and bluffing. Tian Bue sneered. What? Are you here to be funny like Deadwood Evergreen? Muyu's hand slightly moved, and he stared at Tian Bue. You will understand. Powerful formation patterns suddenly spread out from under Muyu's feet, instantly enveloping Tian Bue. Then, the 5 shadow swords scattered from different angles, trembling gently and surrounding Tian Bue. Tian Bue wanted to rush out, but he was directly covered by the formation patterns and bounced back. Want to kill me? This formation technique is not enough. Tian Bue's body was already covered by the shadow of the heavenly astral shield. His heavenly astral spear was also ready, and powerful spiritual energy instantly condensed on the heavenly astral spear. The heavenly astral spear was invincible. With its strength, it could completely shatter the formation barrier Muyu used to trap him. But Muyu's 5 core explosion rune vortexes had already floated out, fusing into the shadow sword. A terrifying pressure instantly enveloped the area, as if a million mountains were crashing down, causing many people to secretly break out in cold sweat. At the same time, Tian Bue's heavenly astral spear had already stabbed forward. The tip of the spear and the formation patterns clashed, and countless ripples shot out. Spiritual energy violently splashed in all directions, and the formation pattern barrier was actually covered with dense cracks. Wah! Like porcelain shattering. The formation barrier Muyu used to trap Tian Bue had already been broken, and Tian Bue disappeared from his spot. One of Muyu's shadow sword slashed toward Tian Bue, but Tian Bue actually dodged it. Mu Yu's expression changed slightly. Back then, Tian Bue had not been able to rush out of the barrier set up by Deadwood Daddy, because Deadwood Daddy had been prepared. He had set up a trap and used a powerful formation to trap Tian Bue. But now, Mu Yu could not use a powerful trap array in a hurry, and Tian Bue had actually escaped. Chapter 542. Everyone stared at Mu Yu's shadow clone sword in horror. That sword strike contained the power of a combination stage cultivator. Not only did it strike the desert, but it also struck everyone's chests, making it hard for them to breathe. Mu Yu was only at the out-of-body stage a few days ago. Everyone thought that he wouldn't dare to come here. They didn't expect that he would appear with a spirit-severing stage cultivation. He even forced the young master of Stargate, Tian Bushi, to flee in a sorry state. He also used a terrifying array to launch a combination stage attack. It was said that the disciple of a true god was the person who could create miracles the most. Now, no one dared to question anything. However, Mu Yu's expression was very serious. He felt as if something had been taken away from his body, and his momentum dropped a lot in an instant. The rank 7 exploding pill array had really taken away his vitality. Vitality was the foundation of a person's life. Everyone only had so much vitality. Mu Yu's vitality was more vigorous than that of ordinary people. However, even he felt a little strange, let alone Deadwood Daddy. Although Deadwood Daddy's body had been transformed by the Restore pill, and he used blood protection shrouding the sky to transfer his vitality to Mu Yu, he didn't have much vitality left. Mu Yu was sure that if Deadwood Daddy let the full power of the exploding pill erupt at that time, he probably wouldn't have lived for more than a few hours. At that time, when Deadwood's father used this formation, he was already prepared to die together with it. This was because it was impossible for him to control this formation with his golden core stage spiritual power. However, he didn't take Tian Bushi away before he died, and he didn't show off in front of Mu Yu. After Tian Bushi flashed out, he didn't retreat. Instead, he turned around and stabbed at Mu Yu with a sharp spear. The array pattern in Mu Yu's hand surged, and a shadow sword was pulled out from the void, blocking the tyrannical heavenly star spear. Then, another shadow sword merged with the exploding pill had been slashed towards Tian Bushi again. Chua! Tian Bue's speed was extremely fast. Once again, he dodged the attack of the form synthesis stage and retreated. However, the powerful shockwave still sent both of them flying. Mu Yu's aura weakened once again. What Mu Yu was losing was not spiritual energy, but life force. Every bit of life force he lost meant that he was getting closer to death. Once one's vitality was depleted to the point where the balance of the 5 elements was broken, one's life would be in danger. He looked at Xiao Shuai and Long Tongue. Xiao Shuai and Long Tongue were actually fighting Sikong Chiwen. However, Sikong Chiwen clearly had the upper hand and was suppressing Long Tongue, who was the main attacker. Big Earthworm, work harder and kill this guy. Little Commander's hair was standing on end from the lightning, but he still waved his hand energetically. Countless sword shadows mixed with lightning fell towards Sikong Chiwu. The entire desert was already full of holes from the lightning sword shadows. Little Mouse, can you give me a little more power with your Dark Heaven lightning? Long Tongue pulled away from Sikong Chiwen and spat out a dragon's breath. Violent Sword Chi swept towards Sikong Chiwen. This move is called Xiao Shuai's Dark Heaven Lightning. Don't call me by the wrong name again. Otherwise, I will get angry. Xiao Shuai corrected him. Everyone felt that this was inconceivable. Who would have thought that Mu Yu actually had 2 strange helpers by his side? Not only were they strange, but they were also holding back the dark horse of the supreme immortal ranking, Sikong Chiwen. Mu Yu could see that it was impossible for Long Tongue and Xiao Shuai to fight a protracted battle with Sikong Chiwen. The two of them were relying on Mu Yu's sword Qi and relying on the wind-wind heart linking formation to consume most of Mu Yu's spiritual energy. It was equivalent to Mu Yu using half of his spiritual energy to deal with Sikong Chiwen. This way of fighting was centered around Mu Yu. Once his spiritual energy was depleted, the two of them would be in danger. He couldn't drag this out any longer. Boundless killing intent locked onto Tian Bushi in the distance. After dodging 2 consecutive attacks from Mu Yu, Tian Bushi noticed that Mu Yu's aura was gradually declining. He also understood the weakness of Mu Yu's powerful formation technique. Looks like you're a little exhausted. What's wrong? Is this all that withered tree evergreen's formation technique can do? Tian Bushi sneered as he clashed with Mu Yu again. The two of them exchanged blows and retreated again. Tian Bushi's Heavenly Star Spear and Heavenly Star Shield were both offensive and defensive. He was also very agile. As long as he wasn't hit by Mu Yu's 7th-order explosive pills, it was basically impossible for Mu Yu to kill him. In particular, there seemed to be a layer of strange, spiritual energy fluctuation around him. This fluctuation didn't belong to the Stargate technique. It was the combined spiritual energy of the people of the 8 gates. This spiritual energy was originally used to deal with Sikong Chiwen, but it was used on Mu Yu by accident. I'll definitely complete Deadwood Daddy's unfinished wish for him. You'll help me, right? Mu Yu pulled out a shadow clone sword from the void and gently stroked it. The shadow clone sword had fought side by side with Mu Yu for so long that it was already connected to him. It was a godly weapon and also a flying sword with emotions. Ever since Feng Haochen gave it to Mu Yu, it had never left Mu Yu. When it was stabbed by Shi Mingwei in the second heaven, the powerful tearing force of the teleportation formation couldn't take it away. It broke free on its own and returned to Mu Yu's side. The shadow clone sword gently trembled as if it was responding to Mu Yu. Mu Yu's gaze was very firm. Deadwood Daddy wanted to use this formation technique to prove that he had the ability to be Mu Yu's master, but unfortunately, he couldn't do it. This was also one of Mu Yu's obsessions. He knew that only by using Deadwood Daddy's formation technique to kill Tian Buwei would he be able to fulfill Deadwood Daddy's wish. Do you really think I'll just passively take a beating? Tian Buwei's entire body was covered by the Heavenly Star Shield. His entire aura began to rise. The Heavenly Star Spear in his hand flickered with cold, killing intent. The tip of the spear trembled slightly. A faint killing intent surrounded the tip of the spear, causing the air to distort. The Heavenly Star Spear had already merged into the void. Heavenly Star, 8 directions contradiction. Tian Buwei's entire body was like a shuttle. The 8 Heavenly Star shields overlapped in front of him. A heavy and thick aura was instantly emitted from the Heavenly Star shields. It was like a towering mountain in a storm, causing people to want to retreat. The 8 Heavenly Star shields reflected in everyone's eyes appeared to be indestructible. It was as if nothing in the world could break through them. They represented the supreme, absolute defense. Tian Buwei's figure instantly closed the distance between him and Mu Yu. At the same time, a spear suddenly emerged from the center of the shields in his hand. The Heavenly Star Spear was hidden in the Heavenly Star Shields. The world's most indestructible spear and the world's most indestructible shield fused together. The perfect combination of absolute defense and absolute attack. It swept up a gale of sand, so unstoppable and unstoppable. Tian Buwei's move didn't reveal any flaws. Mu Yu couldn't dodge, nor did he have any thoughts of dodging. The shadow sword that had fused with the rank 7 pill explosion formation slightly hummed in his hand. A faint brilliance circulated around the sword. Black and white spirit energy constantly swam around the sword, and countless sword stars flashed within. Then, the remaining 3 shadow swords that had fused with the rank 7 pill explosion formation condensed into one. The monstrous aura was like a ripple on the surface of a calm lake. The ripple grew larger and larger, gradually forming a vortex. Boundless sword chi surged out of the vortex, as if it could crush everything in the world. Mu Yu's eyes flashed with black and white mysterious formation patterns. Within the formation patterns, there were countless sword shadows. Each sword shadow displayed the sword aura of the heavenly sword nine guides. At a certain moment, all the sword auras suddenly stopped in one direction. The formation patterns wrapped around the sword auras and entangled with each other. Boundless sword chi suddenly spread out. Muyu stabbed out with the shadow sword in his hand without any fancy moves. In everyone's eyes, this sword was so simple that it could be blocked without any effort. But when they wanted to block this sword, they suddenly realized that this simple sword had countless changes. They couldn't see through it and didn't know where to block it. The formation drew Muyu's life energy from his body and flowed through the shadow sword. A terrifying aura came from the shadow sword. It was as if something was resuscitation in the shadow sword, making it different from the others. 9 heavenly sword, 9 guides, 9 return to 1. The combination of absolute defense and absolute attack. The supreme sword formation of the heavenly sword 9 guides. The 2 powerful auras seemed to be able to tear apart the entire desert. The tip of the sword and the tip of the spear easily collided. There was no sound or explosion. Time seemed to freeze at that moment. Muyu and Tian Bue remained in their attacking positions. Neither of them took a step back. Who won? The onlookers swallowed hard. They were shocked by the terrifying moves of the two. They didn't even dare to breathe loudly. No one knew if the true god's disciple Muyu or Tian Bue had the upper hand. But the clash of the spear and sword made them tremble from the depths of their souls. That terrifying scene lingered in their minds. Boom! Countless formation patterns, sword chi, and spear shadows violently scattered in all directions. All the sand beneath their feet was reduced to the most primitive powder. A large crater appeared in the ground. Even the flowing sand of the death desert instantly evaporated. Muyu's face instantly paled. His aura rapidly declined. It was as if something had been sucked out of him. A terrifying aura of death spread through his body. He was like an old man past his prime. There wasn't the slightest bit of vitality in him. The rank 7 Dan explosion array had almost sucked away half of his life force. However, Tian Bue's expression didn't change. His aura was also maintained at its strongest state. That attack, just now, didn't seem to have consumed much of his energy. It was a stark contrast to Muyu's weakened state. Tian Bue won. This was the thought in everyone's mind. In everyone's opinion, this battle had exhausted most of Muyu's energy. In terms of aura, he was no longer comparable to Stargate's young gate master, Tian Bue. Everyone felt a trace of pity for Muyu. This young man who could create miracles the most, and was even the disciple of a famous true god, had ultimately lost to the indestructible heavenly star spear and indestructible heavenly star shield? Kacha! A faint cracking sound suddenly and clearly entered everyone's ears. This sound was so faint that it was almost inaudible. However, everyone present had extremely sensitive ears. Their eyes widened in shock as they looked at the heavenly astral spear in shock and disbelief. Countless cracks gradually covered the heavenly spear and then spread down to the heavenly star shield. Crash! The heavenly spear and heavenly star shield that were known as the strongest weapons in the world actually turned into fragments that filled the sky. It was so dazzling in everyone's eyes. Tian Bue raised his head in disbelief. Looking at the weakened Muyu, Tian Bue's eyes were filled with shock and anger. Chapter 543. Impossible. How can my heavenly star spear and heavenly star shield shatter? Tian Bue roared furiously. The heavenly star spear and heavenly star shield were the supreme treasures of the Stargate. They were divine objects that had been passed down for a long time. Nothing had ever been able to leave a mark on them, let alone destroy them. The spear and shield had both offensive and defensive capabilities. In the history of the Stargate, their glorious achievements could be traced back, let alone a body integration stage cultivator. Even a tribulation passing stage cultivator might not be able to destroy them. However, at this moment, they had turned into fragments that filled the sky and scattered in the dust. It was so laughable. Treasures are powerful because of the user, not because the user is powerful because of the treasures. Do you think that just by relying on the heavenly star spear and heavenly star shield and your father's help, you could defeat a few extreme immortals? Besides, in terms of the power of treasures, my shadow clone sword is thousands of times stronger than yours. The shadow clone sword was one of the 9 heavenly swords of Jian Ing Chenfeng. It was a divine weapon that defeated 5 spirit lords Yumeng. It was far more precious than the heavenly star spear and heavenly star shield. Mu Yu calmly looked at the shattering of the heavenly star spear and heavenly star shield. He was not surprised at all. The heavenly star spear and heavenly star shield might be indestructible, but the shadow clone sword in Mu Yu's hand was a rare treasure. When Mu Yu's life force was absorbed by the formation and flowed into the shadow clone sword, he clearly felt that the shadow clone sword seemed to come alive. What surprised him the most was that he actually saw Xiao Shuai's figure in the shadow clone sword. In the distance, Xiao Shuai raised his head in confusion. In the past, he had always been in a daze. He had never felt close to Mu Yu's shadow clone sword. However, when Mu Yu's life force flowed into the shadow clone sword, he felt an unprecedented joy. It was as if some frozen memory in his body had been awakened. Was Xiao Shuai really related to the shadow clone sword? Mu Yu looked at Xiao Shuai, who was controlling the dark sky lightning in the wind-wind-heart linking formation, and felt very surprised. Xiao Shuai was a foodie who only knew how to open his mouth. Not only did he know how to use the sword formation, but he also knew about the 9 heavenly sword guides. This was already very unusual. At this moment, he could even see Xiao Shuai's figure in the shadow clone sword. However, Mu Yu didn't think too much about it, because the time for revenge was right in front of him. Boom! The originally silent shadow sword suddenly erupted with a powerful sword chi again, exploding in the heavenly astral spear and heavenly astral shield fragments. It swept down and directly annihilated the entire person. But heaven doesn't wait, didn't dodge at all. On the contrary, his face was filled with hatred and determination. You're the first one to force me to this extent. Tian Bue's body suddenly erupted with powerful spiritual energy, fluctuations like a volcanic eruption. His aura was rising steadily. He stretched out his right index finger and crossed it in front of his chest. The blood-red light formed the shape of the Big Dipper. It was strange and enchanting, like the afterglow of the setting sun. Then, Tian Bue pointed his finger, and a rainbow light shot out from the Big Dipper in front of him, meeting Mu Yu's sword chi. That rainbow light swayed through the air, as if it had shattered the void, causing the surrounding spiritual energy to begin to distort. As it shot out, circles of ripples revolved around the rainbow light, gradually expanding, and a terrifying tearing force spread out. Swoosh! The sword chi and the rainbow light collided, and both of them retreated at the same time. Mu Yu knew that he had missed a good opportunity. As the young master of Stargate, how could Tian Bue only have the heavenly astral spear and heavenly astral shield? When I fight with others, I never need to use my 7 stars brilliant moon. You're the first person lucky enough to see my 7 stars brilliant moon, Tian Bue said coldly. The supreme technique of Stargate, a secret technique that only the Gate Master could learn, the 7 stars brilliant moon. The stars revolve around the moon, using one's spiritual energy to communicate with the power of the stars in the world and transform it for one's own use. It was a technique that was feared in the cultivation world. It was said that the 7 stars brilliant moon could strengthen one's body for a short period of time, allowing one to explode with destructive power. It was more than enough to smash a mountain range with one punch. I don't care. Mu Yu's eyes were filled with monstrous killing intent. His body moved, and the shadow clone sword appeared again. With a slash, he broke through mountains and rivers and charged forward bravely. At this moment, his body was in a terrible state, but the black and white spiritual energy in his body had been healing his wounds. If not for this mutated spiritual energy, he probably wouldn't have been able to hold on. The Big Dipper star formation in Tian Bue's hand dispersed, and every blood-red star merged into his body. His palms, elbows, and shoulders shone with starlight, and the star in his heart was especially dazzling. He clenched his right fist and fearlessly met Mu Yu's sword chi with a punch, using his physical body to fight the sword chi. Clang! The sound of metal colliding rang out. Tian Bue's body seemed to have turned into a killing machine, incomparably tough. When he collided with Mu Yu's shadow clone sword, his body glowed red, and a powerful force exploded from his body. It traveled along the shadow clone sword to Mu Yu's wrist. Mu Yu frowned slightly. This force smashed into his wrist like a collapsing mountain, causing the bones in his wrist to be dislocated and even crack. The 7 stars' brilliant moon gave Tian Bue such terrifying power. Mu Yu couldn't hold on to the shadow clone sword anymore. His hand loosened, and the shadow clone sword was sent flying. However, the formation runes flashed, and the shadow clone sword merged into the void. Mu Yu teleported behind Tian Bue and kicked his head. Bang! Mu Yu's foot landed solidly on the back of Tian Bue's head, but he felt as if his foot had kicked a steel plate. Tian Bue didn't move at all. On the contrary, a powerful force surged out of his body, completely repelling Mu Yu's force. No one in the spirit-severing stage has ever been able to hurt me. You can't either. Tian Bue twisted his wrist, grabbed Mu Yu's foot, and gripped it tightly. Mu Yu gritted his teeth. He felt as if the bones in his foot had been broken. He raised his left hand, and 2 shadow clone swords stabbed at Tian Bue's face from different directions. Tian Bue had no choice but to let go and block the shadow clone swords. Mu Yu also took the opportunity to withdraw. Mu Yu quietly floated in the air. The black power in his body was rapidly devouring his injured bones, while the white spirit power was constantly repairing Mu Yu's injuries. The cracks in his bones were gradually mending, and the pain gradually disappeared. Although most of Tian Bue's achievements were obtained with the help of his father, it was undeniable that Tian Bue had abilities that he could be proud of. You want to kill me? I'm afraid you don't have the qualifications. The 7-star clusters on Tian Bue's body shone, making him look extremely demonic. These 7-star clusters used a special method to protect his meridians and bones. It was like an indestructible body, making Mu Yu feel a great deal of pressure. Tian Bue punched again. The wind from his fist crushed the yellow sand, turning it into the purest force. Mu Yu's shadow clone swords wrapped around the formation pattern. The formation pattern agilely shook in the air like rippling water, guiding Tian Bue's fist wind to the right. A pitch-black vortex appeared on the formation pattern on the right, swallowing Tian Bue's powerful force. At the same time, the formation pattern on Mu Yu's hand appeared again. A white vortex appeared in front of Tian Bue's chest. It was the complete opposite of the force that swallowed Tian Bue. The white vortex erupted, and a powerful fist wind surged from the white vortex toward Tian Bue. Tian Bue frowned. He shattered the white vortex's fist wind with one punch, shattering the white vortex along with it. Wind, shifting flowers into trees formation. It used the black vortex to absorb the opponent's attack, and then used the white vortex to counterattack. This formation was very taxing on Mu Yu's body. This was because he had to be able to withstand this force. Otherwise, he would be hit by the formation's backlash if he wasn't careful during the shifting process. He couldn't shift too many times in this kind of battle because Tian Bue's punches were getting more and more terrifying. Mu Yu panted heavily. The battle with Tian Bue just now had consumed a lot of his spiritual power. Not only that, but because he had used a forbidden technique that burned his life force was rapidly depleting. His body's reaction time was getting worse and worse. The 7 stars on Tian Bue's body lit up from time to time. Every time it lit up, a rainbow light would shoot out with powerful killing intent toward Mu Yu with the force of a thunderbolt. Each rainbow light carried a destructive aura and was unstoppable. Mu Yu didn't dare to block it. This rainbow light was too overbearing. He could clearly feel the destructive power contained in it. It was comparable to an attack from a combination stage cultivator. Muyu couldn't block it. However, after each rainbow light was used, Tian Bui's aura would drop for a moment, as if he was decaying and becoming chaotic. Clearly, he couldn't completely control a powerful technique like 7 Stars Brilliant Moon. Or rather, this was the flaw of 7 Stars Brilliant Moon. As long as he took advantage of the moment when Tian Bui was weakened after using the rainbow light, he would definitely be able to defeat him. However, the power of the rainbow light was too strong. Muyu wanted to dodge it, but it was also quite difficult. Muyu gritted his teeth and gathered 5 7th-order explosive pills in his hand again. If he wanted to fight against the rainbow light, he could only choose to meet force with force. Using the 7th-order explosive pills had a great impact on him. At this moment, Muyu had no choice but to make a killing blow. He integrated all the medicinal power of the 7th-order explosive pills into the array pattern. The array pattern trembled violently, and the golden light bloomed again. Muyu took a Bone Emperor pill. The Bone Emperor pill could withstand the attack of a spirit-severing stage cultivator without being injured. Although the rainbow light on Tian Bui's body already had the power of a combination stage cultivator, the power of the Bone Emperor pill could still offset some of the impact. The explosive pills were all integrated into the Shadow Sword. The Shadow Sword trembled, and a powerful force emerged again. Muyu's little remaining life force was once again sucked away. The Shadow Sword seemed to come alive in an instant. It absorbed Muyu's life force and emitted a powerful sword intent. After the Shadow Sword absorbed Muyu's life force several times in a row, its power seemed to be even stronger than before. At this time, the rainbow light on Tian Bui's body lit up again. The Shadow Sword flashed with a blue light. It was like cold autumn water, suffused with a lonely cold light. It seemed to have undergone some kind of change. On the sword body, mysterious patterns surged. Muyu had never seen these patterns before. It seemed to be activated by Muyu's life force. Then, the Shadow Sword became incomparably illusory, as if it had lost its form. However, such an illusory sword was mixed with the brilliant might of heaven. The blue light bloomed, and the sword light was tens of thousands of feet long. It collided with Tian Bui's rainbow light. Boom! Violent gales rose in all directions, and yellow sand flew everywhere. Terrifying fluctuations shot out. Tian Bui's eyes widened in shock and anger. His insufferably arrogant rainbow light was split apart by the Shadow Sword. It was crushed and pointed at Tian Bui's chest. In a moment of desperation, Tian Bui raised his hands and crossed them in front of him. The 2 clusters of stars on his wrists emitted a dazzling light. They intertwined in front of him, wanting to block Muyu's Shadow Sword. However, he had underestimated the power of the Shadow Sword. Tian Bui's right hand was cut off at the wrist by the Shadow Sword. Muyu's sword turned and aimed at Tian Bui's throat. Tian Bui was in extreme pain. His face was ashen. He could only watch as the killing intent of the Shadow Sword enveloped him. He had no time to react. How dare you? You're tuning into the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.